All right, everybody, let's get started. It's 7 o'clock. We see we have a full house. Hola, konnichiwa. Welcome, welcome. This will be a great night to learn a little bit more about our cultures. And keep watching the TV. At some point, you'll see yourselves, I'm sure. So, all right, let's go ahead and start with a roll call.
Mayor Bagley.
Here.
Council members Christensen. Here. Finley. Here. Martin. Here. Peck. Rodriguez. Here. Waters. Here. Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, great. Let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's go ahead and move on to motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas. Joan, you have a couple of things?
I do.
And also my screen's not, I wasn't powered, but anyway, I'll let you know. Keep going, Joan, sorry.
Actually, I have 4 things, so bear with me. First of all, I would want I would like to know if council would be interested in directing staff to have a study session on prairie dogs for the August 14th meeting study session and the first reading on that ordinance on 8/21, which would be the following regular session. So I think that the residents deserve to have a study session. They have asked for it. It's what we normally do. So I would just like to know what you think about that. And should we give direction to council to do that?
Not all at once, everybody. Polly Christensen, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I do think that's a good idea.
Oh, hold on.
Yes, I do think that's a good idea. We've been asked on numerous times, and there's still a lot of things that sort of need to be hashed out before it comes to us on a first reading. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I disagree. I think that we have had multiple sessions on the prairie dog issue, beginning with meetings held with various prairie dog protection groups before we were even sworn into council, and that the prairie dog issue has been hashed out as thoroughly as it can be. I checked in with staff, and they feel like they have direction from council, and the fact that the direction may not be what some residents want doesn't mean we need to use another study session on it. So I will be voting no on that. Thank you.
Dr. Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. I guess I have 2 questions. First would be, if there isn't sufficient clarity or direction from the staff's perspective, then I would favor a study session if you feel like you need more direction. But I will say I've appreciated all the input we've had, what we've received from, and as Councilmember Martin suggested, hearing is not necessarily agreeing with everything, and I don't agree with everything that's been recommended. I appreciate the work that the staff has done so far. So my first question is, do you feel like you need more information?
Based on the feedback that we received from council on the direction in terms of what to put together in the ordinance, that is how we've been operating on that direction. If council wants to change that, then we will need new direction, but if it's consistent with what council said before, then we have the direction.
So I have 3 questions. My second question then would be, given that information, when would you anticipate bringing it on an agenda as a first reading?
We were looking at the end of August, first part of September based on that. I know that, Eugene, you've reviewed it, so it looks like there's 2 of us involved, so we have the operational and the legal piece. I think they're through with the review on that. But
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. So a draft ordinance is out for staff review and comment. I know they're working on it. I do know that staff is spending most of its time on the inclusionary housing ordinance. I would estimate that they have probably spent 50 to 60 staff hours discussing inclusionary housing. That's what we understood was council's priority. We can move forward with the prairie dogs, but there's only one attorney that does both of those things.
Well, my third question was going to be, what gets moved down if we move prairie dogs up? That was my third question. What do we not do on the 14th if we turn that into a study session for prairie dogs?
Well, we're spending our time right now on inclusionary housing in terms of bringing all of that together. It's fundamentally the same staff that's working with both of those issues.
See, given those priorities, for me, the conclusion of where we are and where we need to go with inclusionary housing clearly is a precedent or a priority.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. So my question along these lines is, there were some concerns raised that in our last, I believe you would call it work session on the Friday morning, was the last time we discussed the prairie dog ordinance. And at that time, I believe various members of council gave suggestions on things, but did not technically provide formal direction. And so that's where my confusion may be, is where there may be substantial changes made due to suggestions made by council.
As we indicated in that meeting, I know that there was comments from the public.
Can you get in there, Harold?
As I indicated in that meeting, I know that there were conversations from the public where we felt like that feedback was appropriate and they made adjustments based on public feedback. I haven't had that review sent to me in my queue yet to say, was there anything that council specifically said in there that was brought into that feedback? But I think there was some overlap in what the public was saying.
Okay.
But I can't speak specifically to those issues at this point, but I can find out and get back with council.
And so would there be significant delay on the first reading if we did hold an additional study session? Outside of reprioritizing everything, you know, a significant delay on the original concept of the late August, early September.
I think it would depend on whether or not there were changes to it and the extent that those changes were brought into the ordinance.
Okay.
If there are a lot of changes, then that would possibly cause a delay. If there's not any changes, then that wouldn't cause a delay.
Thank you.
But I don't know.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mary Bagley. I think we've talked about prairie dogs enough, and I will not be voting for this.
All right, there's several more people in the queue, but we can keep talking about it. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you. Councilman Rodriguez, I'm glad you brought that up. We did discuss it in a work session, but a work session is not a study session. We do not give direction to council in a work session. The work session is not for public invited to be heard either. If you go back to the motion that was made about work sessions, that was for council to discuss items that they wanted to discuss inside the Sunshine Law. And that was the whole point of it. It was not to give direction. It was not to make motions. It was definitely not for public invited to be heard. So when you said that we gave direction, no, you didn't, I'm sorry. If I noticed the discomfort of staff within that work session because we were kind of on the line there as to what we were supposed to be doing. So that is one of the reasons that I'm asking for the study session, is that if we do want to give council direction, that's when we need to do, not council staff, that's where we need to do it, not in a work session. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. If the staff would determine that as a result of anything said in that work session, that clarification would be needed by the council, then that would be a reason for bringing this up in a future study session. However, I would like to stipulate that if that happens, it does not impact the schedule of regular session legislation. Prairie dogs, it's time for them to go to the back of the line. We shouldn't, especially, should not prioritize inclusionary housing below prairie dogs.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I agree. I think we all agree that we've been working on inclusionary housing for a very, very, very long time. And it's been By the time we get it done, it will be about 9 months. So obviously that takes priority over prairie dogs, but I do think that we could also have an actual study session, part of a study session. I mean, our study sessions are not exclusively one thing, so anyway, that's some date in the future.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I think at this point, somewhat to echo City Manager Dominguez, I have not seen a new draft ordinance, so I don't have the ability to speak on changes that may or may not have been made. And so I'd actually prefer to wait until I see a draft ordinance before I decide if I would want to do a study session upon said draft ordinance.
Mayor, what I can do is let me meet with the staff and make sure that we're still following in line with the direction that that you all have given us.
Right.
If there are any changes that we feel that need to be brought back, then we will bring that back as a study session. But if it's in alignment, we'll just focus on, unless there's different direction by the council, we will focus on bringing it back for a first reading.
Right. So I was just, Dr. Waters?
Just one more question. Once we have an ordinance on the agenda, first reading, we're not constrained on what changes we would want to make.
No.
We could even call for a study session after a first reading before we get to a second reading. So there are degrees of freedom available to us to do whatever needs to be done with that ordinance are all on the table, correct?
Correct. So in the first, well, this is different. So in the first basic, when we bring it to you for first reading, we figured that in that first reading, we would actually pull it off of the consent agenda and do a presentation to the city council and say, here's what this ordinance says. Like other topics of significant interest, council can say, we like it, we don't like it, trash it, here's what we want you to add to it. If there's a tremendous amount of adds, then we could say, we need to bring this back for more conversation. Or if council says, no, we're happy with this ordinance, then we can bring it for second reading. We may not need a study session, we may need time to amend it after first reading, and we can just delay the second reading to accommodate that. So there are frankly a host of options in terms of how we manage this.
So I do just my last comment would be with Councilmember Peck. I want to respect the input we've had and your perspective on this. My concern is the prioritizing of prairie dogs relative to affordable housing and the other issues. And if we still have that option after first reading for a study session, if we need it in direction, then I'd be supportive. I'd just as soon keep moving forward though with the affordable housing or inclusionary zoning ordinance.
So there was no second on the motion. Right, that's what I mean. So, I mean, but my point is that I echo Dr. Waters' comments. First reading, we could turn it into a study session with a presentation and discussion and pull it and vote it down, vote it up, tell staff to go back. And so I echo what Dr. Waters said.
Or if I feel like there's a need to come back based on what I get briefed on, then I will do that based on my prerogative on the agenda.
All right. Is there anything else, Councilmember Peck? Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a list. Hang in there, sit back, relax. So last year I had made the comment about a prairie dog village, and I've since then talked to Dan Wolford and David Bell, and they suggested, we talked about making the northwest end of McIntosh Lake, where there already are prairie dogs that the city's managing, a village of some sort with educational signage. So if council thinks that's a good idea or whatever, can we direct staff to put that in motion? It solves an educational need. It's right there off of 66 where that county Red Barn educational facility is, and there is a path directly from that educational facility to that northwest end where the prairie dogs already are. And we don't eradicate those prairie dogs. They stay there. So I think we thought that would be a great place to put educational signage for the kids, the teachers to be able to take kids and educate them.
Do you, okay, rather than making a comment and then all this, just to keep us on track, why don't you make a motion, and then if there's a second, we will discuss.
Okay. I move that we direct staff to investigate the possibility of making the northwest end of McIntosh Lake Prairie Dog Village for educational purposes.
Okay. Councilmember Finley. Hold on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. You wouldn't add more prairie dogs there, would you? Okay. The neighbors there, I don't think would appreciate that. Yeah, there are. And I live on McIntosh Lake. There are neighbors, and they would be very disappointed if you added any more, because they're in the yards of those folks over there on the north side of McIntosh. I don't mind if you do an educational thing, but I would hate to see more prairie dogs.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Finley. I think that's a good point. And maybe we can apply some of the stuff that we have learned about passive containment should be applied to those prairie dogs. But what I would like to add to the direction is that it go into the regular budget queue for, it's probably parks, correct? You know, that, again, we don't want them to go to the head of the line, but it's a good idea in general.
There's nobody left in the queue. That's what I was going to do. Just say that put it in a CIP, figure out when it would come in. Don't kill the prairie dog colony between now and then. That's implied. You know, hey, good news. We can save $2 million because we exterminated all the prairie dogs on Northwest McIntosh. I mean, so.
That's actually a colony that we do manage. And when we say manage, you have to manage so you don't create other issues. That is something that is in the open space natural resources plan. So they are contemplating that if we did it, or in the plan in doing something like that, is actually doing it in partnership with the county in their learning center, so those two areas can play off of each other in their broader vision for education. So,
okay. So we have a motion. Let's vote. Got you off guard, didn't I, Michelle? I was like, we're voting now. This is democracy in action, people. Go back to Japan and Mexico, and we save these dogs.
Okay. My next two are about
hold on
the
one second.
Okay. Okay.
Have we all punched
Sorry.
in? Somebody hasn't voted yet. Did you mean to vote against? Okay, so. All right, so it passes 6-1 with Bonnie Finley dissenting. All right, no further comments on that. Okay, Councilmember Peck.
Two more issues, and these are both about the airport. When we had the financial update from David Slater a few months ago, I wasn't really pleased with the revenue portion of it, so I asked Jim Golden to please give me a report on the last 2 years of the revenue and expenses of the airport. The one thing that I have highlighted on your copy is the drop zone fee and the swoop pond. When we put that drop zone fee in, it was, I thought, our expectation that we would be making $35,000 a year with that fee. And from this report, we've only made 6 1 year and 7 the next. So my request, if council agrees, is that we get a financial report of all revenues and expenditures by the airport received or incurred for the last 2 years. And the reason I want to do this is we're putting in a budget, and the airport's going to come back and ask us for money. I want to know where the money's going. I want to know how much they're making. Why haven't we made our target? And if we have, where is that reported? And the other thing that's not on this report is the consultant, the engineering consultant that was hired for the south end of the airport for the infrastructure. So I want to know what that report was and what the cost of that consultant was.
I guess
so,
before you make a motion, I guess
sure.
my question is, technically, we get a couple hours with staff every week if we want it, right? So I guess my question is, can't we just have Councilmember Peck request that and staff provide it?
We don't really need to have a presentation as far as I'm
Yep.
concerned. We can just
Can you just
have
get-
an email copy of it.
Yeah,
If
we
you can
can,
get-
we can provide the information via
Yeah.
email to the entire council.
Let's just do that.
There-
That's
I mean,
exactly what
I don't think that needs a vote. That's just a council member requesting staff for information, and that's
Exactly.
appropriate.
Exactly.
And there are some things that I've been made aware of late last week that we're looking into to see how all of the rules and regs apply
Okay.
and come together.
All right, Councilmember Martin? I'm clearing the mic a lot tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. There has been a presentation on the Southside infrastructure in the Airport Advisory Board. So this Friday, I will give a short talk about that.
Last but not least, once again, if council concurs, I would like staff, I'm going to make a motion. I move that staff approach the Aviation Board as to the legality of restricting the hours of operation on the landing zone at the airport. And if there is legal precedence to do that, because that is public area, it has nothing to do with FAA in the sky, I would like them to bring that information back, is can we legally regulate hours of operation on the landing zone, the area? Not just for skydiving, but also for hot air balloons, ultralights, whatever lands on the grassy area.
So you're talking the drop zone then?
Exactly.
Okay.
You said it much better.
Mayor
than
Pro
I
Tem
did.
Christensen?
I would second that.
I don't see anybody in the queue. I guess my thoughts are, I would be opposed to shutting down. I see where you're going, because first of all, I thought about that previously. So meaning that we've got airport noise issues that basically focus exclusively on mile-high skydiving. Meaning that my favorite question is, if I promised you we could shut down the skydiving, would you be opposed to a longer airport or 24/7 hours? Or no one seems to mind the airport, but for that skydiving operation. And so I don't think, it would be fair to punish the other users at the airport, especially like hot air balloons or we don't use gliders. But the other thing is, there is a component to national security and national transportation in all this. Meaning that if you're going to fly from point A to point B and you're going to land at an airport, if you're out of fuel, if you're planning your trip, most airports you're not expected to, they're closed on Saturday, or they close at 6 o'clock every night. I mean, when you're in the air and flying, I guess my thought is that I don't necessarily want to do that. But anyway, Dr. Waters? And I would not have said anything if I knew people were going to jump in the queue. Go ahead. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
I wasn't going to be in the queue until your comment. So, thank you, Mayor Bagley, for recognizing me. The mayor's comments provoke a question. I thought I heard you restrict hours of operation to the drop zone, the grassy area, not runways, not the FOB, not anything else except the drop zone. So then I would ask the mayor, do you still have the same security concerns if it's limited to the grassy drop zone?
Oh, my aged, wise school district superintendent. And that's why I got a C when I was in 5th grade. No, just kidding. Reading comprehension, listening comprehensive. I probably wouldn't have as big a problem with it if it was the drop zone. I just heard airport. See what happens when you fear and assume? All right. All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I was about to make the same clarification. I don't think anybody's proposing curtailing the hours of operation.
I got it. I'm done.
Of the runway.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I would like to amend the motion to say whether it's possible if we curtailed the regular hours of operation on the drop zone, would it still be possible occasionally, like for a fair or something, an event, to sell special licenses for the drop zone on a one-time basis?
Councilmember Rodriguez, yes, I know, Aaron. I know.
Yes, and I do believe that the motion really spoke to a feasibility presentation, and I'd love to hear more information on this, actually,
Yeah.
as far as a legal perspective is concerned.
Councilmember Finley?
My question is, I know that from time to time, we have military folks who use that drop zone for training at other times. And I would hate to see that curtailed because I believe that is a useful function.
Councilmember Peck?
I agree with that, and I think that would fall under Councilwoman Martin's request for special events, and that would be scheduled. They would, I'm sure David Slater would know when that was going to happen. So, yeah, definitely.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I was just going to pile on here and remind you that we're not talking about the entire airport because we all, most of us know somebody who's got an airplane and they come in sometimes at 3 in the morning. You can't just say, nope, you can't land. So yes, this just has to do with the drop zone. And I do think that this could allow for special exceptions for, say, military training or fairs or something like that.
All right,
So I would support it.
We're voting now. Let's vote. And that passes with Dr. Waters, Mayor Pro Tem, and Councilmember Martin dissenting. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You were the three that piled on. Just rub it. It passes unanimously. All right. I'm kidding. It was unanimous. Yeah. All right. So before we go on, does anyone else have any future motions to direct the city? Dr. Waters.
It's not really a motion. Well, maybe it is. As I listened tonight to the items that we've discussed and the sequencing and scheduling, I'm also thinking about other occasions where, for example, I expressed a concern about bike lanes and the obstruction of bike lanes and referenced conversations with staff where we might indeed need to review and revise ordinances to attend to signage and some other guidance to ensure bike lanes aren't obstructed, those kinds of issues, and asked, and we had council agreement to bring something back. And I find myself at times feeling like a pest, that I'll pester the city manager with when's that coming back? So I did ask whether or not it's possible that we could, and I know we get that monthly calendar with council activities, but there's a lot on it. If we could have a separate, or maybe just in different colored font on that calendar, call it tentatively scheduled items to come back to council. So we would know when somebody's asked, or I lay awake at night, I think of nothing, of course, but council stuff, right?
Prairie dogs.
When would this be coming back to council and I don't have to pester you? And if it changes, it changes, and you could footnote it, move for these reasons. It's not to put anybody on the hook, but it's to give us some sense of what the flow is and the kind of items that we hear from our attorney, that these things are in the queue, and if you're going to pile or drive something in, what's going to have to be delayed? So my question is, would other council members find that useful, and if so, could we start with something like that?
We're actually working on that. I've had a conversation with other council members and working with Valerie in the city clerk's office to pull that together, because it's also good for me too, because so many staff are working on so many things that at times I'm actually like you all going, where is this? And so it's a good tool for me too. So we're working on that.
All right. Well, before we go on to public invite to be heard, I've got one more issue that I am going to ask for direction tonight, just because I need to get back to the Mayors and Commissioners Committee. How do we do this, Sean? Do you want to just go ahead and explain the issue, or do you want me to explain the issue? All right. So as you are aware, there's this Go Colorado tax initiative coming up. And Longmont belongs to a group called the Metro Mayor's Caucus. And I go down, and there's 41 mayors. And I am quite vocal in stating the fact that, Longmont is paid now over $50 million, and we have yet to get anything. And no one cares down there, and they're pretty sick. Any chance of me at higher office and having any support is done. Let that be known. And so, the 41 mayors do not like me. But we've also got what's called the Mayors and Commissioners Committee that is composed of Boulder County, Westminster, Louisville, Lafayette, Superior, and Broomfield. And so we meet once a month, and Councilmember Peck has a standing invitation to attend those with me to keep me in line. And as we've been talking about this, how will the 0.62% sales tax or transportation tax, should it pass in November, be used? And so over the last several months, the Mayors and Commissioners Committee, when they go down to talk to the other mayors, or when they talk to CDOT commissioners, or when they talk to CDOT staff, the mantra has been, we want to make sure that the Northwest Corridor gets its fair share. We can't let Longmont and what happened to Longmont with fast tracks happen again. And so we talked about withholding our support until CDOT puts us at the top of the line. CDOT's response in a nutshell was, we're not going to do that, nor are we going to put Northwest Rail on the CDOT list, but we are going to go ahead and fund Highway 287, even though we don't have a project, which worries me, because if they're promising money and we don't have a project yet, are they really going to give us money for it? Two, they've also set aside not 160, not 300 million, but $500 million for a BRT managed lanes corridor between Longmont and Boulder, which is going to come out of not fast tracks. That's not fast tracks. That's that's CDOT funds. And of course, there's other Northwest Rail activities like Highway 7. Boulder's got a couple projects. Westminster refused to sign off on an earlier NCC consensus letter if the mayors didn't come together and agree to provide, I forget how many millions it was, for a fast tracks platform. My statement was, I don't think it's fair that we be giving dollars to a fast tracks project when we haven't gotten anything and you have got something, but I am going to go ahead and support that, because the day is going to come when I'm going to say, I need your support on Northwest Rail, and I expect you to be there. And so long story short, the CDOT, we had that meeting and they approved their list. The Northwest Corridor got its funding. I am not a big fan of spending $500 million on BRT, but that is what Boulder is advocating. That is what previous mayors and councils have advocated. It's what staff has advocated. But it's on the list, right? It's on the list. And so this last session, there was agenda item number 4, and the meeting got heated. The meeting got heated, and they wanted to see if the mayors were going to have consensus to approve, saying that we support the 0.62% tax, and they wanted our blessing. And my response was, and Sean, am I getting all this right so far in a nutshell? All right. My response was, I am not going to, we said as an MCC, we were not going to get behind this tax unless we were put at the front of the line. They never did. They said they couldn't. They did give us the dollars, but then again, they set aside fast tracks dollars at one point too as well, right? But nevertheless, everyone else is a go. And my response was, if this passes, regardless of what happens with the 500 million or 287, my response was 20% of the tax is going to come to local municipalities, counties, and cities. And I asked my fellow mayors and Commissioner Elise Jones, would you be willing to consider setting aside a percentage of your local share for Northwest Rail for Longmont? Boulder County and Boulder balked. They were very hesitant, and I believe it's fair to say They said no at the meeting. And they then said, and then others in the room said, Brian, thank you, but this is not the time. We need consensus. That's what we're going to be talking about. What do you say? Yes, 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 yes. Mayor Bagley, maybe you don't understand me, but I am not going to do this. And then we had another conversation. Well, but that's not why we're here, Brian. We need consensus. Let's go around again. Go, 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 go. What part of no don't you understand? They got very mad. There were tears. There were raised voices. And I basically said, fine. And they were mad at me. And those mayors who were upset, I said, I'm going to do what you did. You refused to sign the letter before. You held out and said, well, I'm going to go to my council. I'm going to take a play out of your playbook, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back and talk to my council. Well, it needs to be done today. No, it doesn't. So here we are. And so I told them I would only sign off if council approved, and they'd better sign off on a letter. And that letter basically says, Dear RTD commissioners, we are willing as a Northwest Corridor to consider setting aside our local match. I challenged them all to go back and ask their councils to get a commitment. I'm going to throw a tantrum next month if they haven't done that. Just heads up. So the question becomes, what do you want me to do? John, do you have anything else to add?
Mayor, Council, Sean Lewis, Assistant City Manager. I think the mayor has summed it up pretty well. I think one of the things that we want to keep in mind is that long term, the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition that Longmont has been a part of now for about 5 to 6 years, our agenda has always been to advocate for more funding from any funding agency, whether that's the federal government, whether it's CDOT, others, certainly RTD, for our fair share. And so I think that Mayor Bagley, as well as the previous efforts of Councilmember Peck, Judy Lubau, and others, has been successful in really getting Northwest Rail on the agenda, if you will. And I think it's probably more at the top of the agenda that it's been in several years. And so I really credit some of the strategy that Mayor Bagley has incorporated in that process in getting that on the list. So the letter that he's referencing does say, and so far we have all the staff of all the other cities in agreement that they will consider, should the vote pass for the Let's Go Colorado, that's the sales tax initiative that Mayor Bagley mentioned, that if that does pass from the voters, that we will consider setting aside some money to seed, as seed money basically, for Northwest Rail, and particularly that peak service, so just kind of an initial starter service, which is much cheaper than the full-blown rail service. So I think that we've been successful in that, and certainly we would like for them to just make a hard commitment to give some portion of their local funds to that. But what they're saying right now is, we will commit to you that we will consider allocating funding towards that, but it's really a consideration as opposed to a hard commitment. In the MCC meeting, that was kind of the last thing discussed, was can we all just agree to consider? And so I guess tonight the question is that sufficient for Longmont? Staff thinks that, again, we've gotten so much further than we've ever gotten before in terms of pushing the envelope on Northwest Rail, that probably this is not a bad deal to say that if we can at least get the other jurisdictions to commit. Westminster staff is presenting 50% of their local match will be put towards Northwest Rail. I know Louisville and Broomfield are also making plans to make a financial commitment. So I think if we only have a city and a county that are maybe holding out, I think that if all of the others go ahead and put a commitment to Northwest Rail, they'll have some pressure at a later date to do the same. So that's staff's perspective.
All right, and that's what I was going to say. My read on it is Westminster is willing to pony up 50% of their local match, in so much as it pertains to getting their portion finished, at the very least. I get the impression that Louisville and Boulder and Longmont would be in for a significant portion. I'm sorry, Broomfield. What did I say? Broomfield and Louisville. And Superior is just kind of like, hey, we don't pay all that much. It's not a big deal. Whatever you guys are going to do, just get along. But yeah, it's definitely Boulder County and Boulder that they use terms like, we don't want to pay twice, or it has to be fiscally responsible, which, I mean, of course it needs to be, but it's all a matter of political opinion. Mayor Pro Tem.
I have a question about what you're asking. Are you asking for whether we support this motion or whether you support the motion as passed? Because I think that, and let me finish first. As I said when we testified down there at CDOT, there's one thing that unites Longmont people, whatever their party, whatever their age, whatever their gender, whatever their political persuasion, we are really, really angry about RTD. So I'm not inclined to support this bill at all, even though we desperately need transportation, because we keep getting left out and keep getting left out. But if we can persuade enough people before this bill comes in to make a commitment that they will provide a portion of theirs so that we can get rail to Longmont, then I would support it.
Yeah.
The problem is that, sorry, the problem is that as a state we have CDOT has absolutely no commitment to mass transportation. And mass transportation, whatever the technology involved, has to be the underlying commitment here. And as long as you don't have any kind of statewide basis for mass transit, then we're always going to be behind the 8 ball. So we have to keep the pressure onto CDOT to actually finish the link from Fort Collins to here, to Denver, to Pueblo, et cetera.
Basically, just to be clear, there's a lot in the queue. What I'm asking specifically tonight is your blessing if they provide a letter stating that they are all willing to consider committing a significant portion to their local assignment to Northwest Rail specifically, which they have written and signed off on, but that is, or the staff has. If they sign that letter and send it off to RTD and are making that written commitment to at least consider it with their councils, would that be enough for Longmont to come back and say, the Mayors and Commissioners Committee of Boulder County and Broomfield, we are in agreement that we are going to support the 0.62% transportation Go Colorado tax? That is the question. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. There are two things that I want to address. First of all, I want to thank Mayor Bagley. He did an excellent job at the MCC meeting. He was really good. I wish I could have videotaped it. So this 0.062 tax is being presented by the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, and it is a statewide transportation tax. I need to commend our staff over the past 2.5 years. They have gotten an alliance or a coalition of the 5 cities on the Northwest Corridor, which has never happened before. And what BNSF has said, you need to come up with a plan, which we did, which is the peak service, and you need to come up with some skin in the game. BNSF is not willing to deal with us unless we make some kind of a commitment. This percentage that can come to the local governments can be our skin in the game. Now, a lot of people have said, Boulder County and City of Boulder specifically have said this is a double taxation because we already pay tax to RTD. So that's a conversation you're going to hear. I recognize that, and to that end, David Genova, who is the executive director of RTD, has agreed to sit down with Judy Lubau, our RTD director, and work with us, along with the CFO of RTD, and say, your local match can be a loan to RTD, and when our funds and sales tax escalate, we will pay you back. So we're going to do that on the 22nd, to sit down with them and say, can we work this out? Because 2042 is not doable for our transportation. We're going to be the biggest city in Longmont, and we need to find funding to seed money to leverage for DRCOG funds. And I want you to know that there are some heavy hitters in the state of Colorado who think the peak service plan is brilliant. The executive director of DRCOG, the David Genova, the RTD DRCOG director, they're all in favor of this peak plan. There's only one entity that is against us right at this moment. And I feel that if we, as a council, commit to putting a portion of our local funds from this tax, not all of it, because we have local issues as well that we need to deal with, not just the Northwest Corridor. That if we commit as a council to putting a portion, if the tax passes, toward Northwest Corridor as seed money, we can meet our resolution to have the Northwest Corridor for the 5 cities by 2026, which is the resolution that this council passed. So I am definitely in favor of this, and I hope the rest of you are as well, because we need to show the other cities that Longmont's a leader. We are not a follower. We're going to lead this and get the transportation and the rail that we voted for. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Just a clarification real quick from Councilmember Peck. You support the City of Longmont supporting this initiative. Is that what you're saying? Sorry.
We're playing microphone tag. I support the City of Longmont, the City Council of Longmont, committing a portion of their local match toward the Northwest Corridor in a letter to RTD. If the majority of the cities on the corridor also agree to putting in escrow a portion of their local match, then I think Longmont will support the initiative. Is that clear? I mean, am I making sense? Okay, thank you.
More to say, though.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So to me, it sounds like the question is whether we support or withhold our support based on the commitment to consider from our fellow municipalities and the county. I will say that I will commit to consider supporting this if outside of our municipal neighbors to the southwest, if we can actually persuade maybe the county, because I do believe county support would be very pivotal in this. So I will commit to consider supporting this so long as we at least persuade the county. I do not much mind if we do not have the support of our neighbors to the southwest, though.
We have, okay.
That's where I stand on it.
And I mean, you have to keep in mind that Boulder County and Boulder, the leadership are twin sisters. They're pretty tight.
I'm
pretty tight.
I'm familiar with the Joneses.
Yeah. So
Keeping up with the Joneses.
I love the Jones sisters. I do. I love the Jones sisters. But they're pretty tight.
I do feel it's necessary that we have county support as well. Mm-hmm. Although I do appreciate the support of Westminster, Broomfield, and Louisville, Lafayette. I mean, it's Louisville.
A lot can happen in a couple of years.
Okay.
So.
But I'm not so much concerned with.
So do you want me to say, just out of curiosity, do you want me to say yes, sign the letter?
I'm not there yet. No, I'm not there yet.
All right, Aaron's a no. All right, Councilmember Finley.
I'd be a yes. I am supportive of any transportation dollars, no matter where they go. But I really applaud your efforts to make sure we get that some action on the Northwest Rail Line. And I do think we're way further than we have been in the past. And thanks for fighting for that. And you have my support.
I annoy people. It's what I do, Bonnie. It's what I do. That's true. Councilmember Martin. Are you a yes as well or a no? You were a yes, right, Joan? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. While I have deep reservations about the mass transit plans on the Northwest Corridor, I very strongly support the idea that Longmont needs to get its fair share of these funds, and if this is a way that the cities of the Front Range can be persuaded to pony up and make us a little bit well on this, then I will support it.
Okay. Dr. Waters.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'm certain I'm going to be supportive of you. I appreciate the efforts, your efforts, Joan, over the years, and Mayor Bagley's efforts to represent Longmont the way you did. I have a few questions, however. Just first would be an observation. The concept of committing to consider, for me, is a little goofy, especially if we're talking about leadership. That's not what leaders do. So I wonder about the leadership in the other cities, number one. Number two, if my wife had said, when asked to be, if she would marry me, and she said, I'm going to commit to consider, I would have no idea where I stood. So I have no clue where we stand with these other municipalities now.
My wife's here. She would say that, oh, it's about where I stand now.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that. Leave that alone. I mean, that whole conversation, I understand it's politics and, and it's a lot of money. I still don't, it would be helpful to me at some point, and I'm certain we'll get this. The municipalities are going to cut 20% of X. X is what 0.062 is going to generate statewide. We're going to get a percentage of that 20%. We're going to get 1/40th or some proportionate, number based on our population of that 20%. So I don't even know what that means in terms of dollars, and what percentage then we would be setting aside as our local match. So understanding there's a whole lot of data here, a lot of information that I would love to have, which we're not going to have to make this decision. I do wonder, how will we know, and when would we know, when after considering to commit, they've decided to commit or not? How would we know, and when would we know? We have 91 days, as I was counting in my head, between now and Election Day, and I'd like some lead time before Election Day to know where did they end up with their consideration.
Here's what I predict, Sean. I've got another year and 4 months left as mayor, something like that. And so that will pass. If it doesn't pass, oh well. If it passes, I imagine there will be another discussion, and the tiers and the volume this past meeting will pale in comparison once we actually have the money. And I'll bring it up again, I promise. And so once we have the money, then the question becomes, show us the data, what are the numbers? Now we have the tax in hand and we have that 20% coming. Before you spend any of it, will you commit?
So your answer to my question is we won't know till after Election Day.
Well, I plan on, my guess is that I'm going to show up at the next MCC and say, I asked everyone here to go back and ask their councils. How many people have done it? Most of them will have not. I'm going to express my dissatisfaction. There will be some form of tantruming, statements made, whatever. And I'm going to tell them, I expect an answer in November if this should pass. And then that is hopefully when they will let us know. Because if they don't go back and ask their council, quite frankly, I've already told Sean, I don't want to go to MCC anymore.
Yeah. Well, it would seem to me that Longmont, with this decision and based on our history, has taken principled, transparent positions that have been consistent and have not been served well by the political relationships or the institutional relationships. And I don't even know what our options would be if after an election consideration turned into something other than commitment, and whether it's withdrawing or what the implications are. But I have to say I'm going to support your effort.
Okay.
How strongly I'm going to go out and champion in this sales tax outside of this chamber, I don't know, based on where we end up as a municipality.
Okay, that's pretty much exactly where I am. Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess I would just like to point out, given that we have a whole lot of students from Japan, and I'm not familiar with the mass transit in Mexico, but Japan has got one of the best mass transits in the world. You get a bullet train from one end of the country to the other in every direction. From there, you can get a subway or a local train or a local bus, and you know, and they run all the time, and they are exactly on time, and they pull up exactly with 1 inch to spare where they're supposed to be. It's lined up right on the ground. So they must think that we're really strange, that we can't, that we're squabbling about
Can't build the train.
just
Sorry,
trying
kids.
to get a bus from one place to another. It brings up the, as Councilman Waters mentioned, you know, lack of leadership and making political decisions that are actually about real needs for people. Regardless of the ridership, there's a need for people to get from one place to another. Regardless of the technology, there's a need for people to get from one place to another. And if we don't make a commitment, and if this state doesn't make a commitment to that, things will just get worse and worse. As long as we have people, whatever the technology is, riding on the highway, it will not solve the problem.
Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I want to address Councilman Waters' comments, but first, Mayor, I would like to ask you, would it be okay if I filmed you at the next MCC meeting and then make a motion to have a study session to show that?
I don't think.
Because I think that would be amazing. So
I don't. Well, I don't think that the primate panorama will be on exhibit the next MCC meeting, but feel free to record me whenever you would like, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you. So, Sean, do you happen to have the figures pulled up on the amount that, I knew you would, on the amount of money that Longmont as well as Boulder County would receive from their portion of this tax?
So during the conversation, I pulled up a really old spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I have to preface this by saying we did not come up with the estimates. I think George Gerstle with the county came up with these estimates. So it's an estimate. Let me just say that, and I can't necessarily speak to the accuracy of that. But if you looked at the current HUTF funding, and I'm going to call out Longmont to give you a sense of what that looks like. We currently receive $2,854,627. They applied the sales tax rate at 0.62%. That number would then change to $4,989,000. The available, assuming that we didn't dig into what we were already receiving, the available amount would be $2.1 million. 50% of that would be $1 million. Again, based on the county's estimates. For example, Boulder, they would get an additional $1.8 million. 50% of that, $948,000. Broomfield, $1.4 million, $743,000. Louisville, $469,000, 50%, $234,000. Westminster, $2.6 million, 50% of that, $1.3 million. If you took the total amount and you said, what does that look like over 20 years? It's about $173 million. 50% of it is $86 million. And then I started playing with a number of scenarios just to see, well, if you went out and you had, and again, this is a WAG.
What's a WAG, Harold?
Yeah, so I'm not going to answer that right. It
We're
is
on Channel 8.
a wild guess.
Wild guess. A
Fill
wig.
in the middle blank. So, but so you went theoretically and said, okay, if we issued $3 million in debt at a 5% interest rate at a term of 20 years, the annual debt service on that would be about $24 million. Again, this is high-level estimates. You know, if we put in, if we put in the $4 million, then that would reduce the amount that RTD would need to invest into the debt service at about $19 million. So there's a number of ways to look at this, but that's only at the 50%. You can break it down to a 10, 20, and obviously I'd want to get the guy that does this on a daily basis to kind of work with our numbers with what I've done, but generally that's the answer to your question. But again, we didn't work on the base numbers, and so it can change dramatically.
So in a nutshell, if it's not enough, it's no skin off anybody's nose. And if it is enough, it's not that much to prime the pump, which is why I'm so emotional and committed to this, because
Thank you,
it
Harold.
could make a difference, and there's no downside. All right, so I'm sitting at 5 yeses and 1 no, right? Is that what I'm hearing from my fellow council? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and you got my approval. Thanks, everybody. All right, we've got a short public invited to be heard. We'll take a break after this. Let's go ahead, and when you come up, please state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes. Once you hit 3 minutes, I'm going to have to cut you off because it's just what we do. All right, let's go ahead and start with Ed Granados. And if you could turn, there you go.
Ed Granados, Humboldt Circle, Longmont. Okay, thank you for this opportunity to speak about a non-agenda item that I hope will become an agenda item soon. I went to your Longmont website, and I was able to find the groundwater quality monitoring reports that were from 2013 to 2017, and I was glad to see them there. However, I couldn't find any air quality reports. And one of the questions I have, do you have any reports that describe the air quality measured at Union Reservoir? If you have reports, why haven't they been added to the website? If you don't have reports, why don't you have any? A December 2017 study of 1.1 million infants born in Pennsylvania between 2004 and 2013 indicated that the introduction of fracking reduces health among infants born to mothers living within 1.9 miles of the wells. What are your plans for dealing with the threat fracking poses to pregnant women and their unborn children that are using Union Reservoir recreational facilities? Instar data shows that on Monday, August 6, 2018, at least a 10-fold increase relative to baseline was seen for methane and VOC levels measured at Boulder Reservoir. I'm being conservative with that 10-fold. My WAG is that when fracking does occur at Union Reservoir, the methane and VOC levels will be higher than those that have been measured at Boulder Reservoir. Question, what are your plans for dealing with the threat of methane and VOCs that are posed to anyone that are using the Union Reservoir recreational facilities? Final question, what data does the City of Longmont currently have that suggests that the air quality at Union Reservoir will be safe for the public that use that facility? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Angie Roberts.
Hello, I'm Angie Roberts. I live at 2001 Amethyst Drive in Longmont, and thank you for hearing me.
So everybody's,
yes.
the paper's doing this. They like to hear you. So get in there.
I can do that. How's that? Okay, hello, my name is Angie Roberts. I live at 2001 Amethyst Drive in Longmont. I've lived in Longmont 15 years, and I love it here. It's the best place I've ever lived, and I'm a bit of a gypsy. So initially, I was relieved that my city council had approved an agreement with TOP Operating and Cup Creek Energy to end drilling on the surfaces within city limits and on city-owned land. I am sorry to say that I was naive and ignorant. The word surfaces had thrown me. I would never have believed that horizontal drilling would provide a route for oil companies to get to the oil and gas deposits under Union Reservoir. How could that even be allowed? How is that different than tunneling into a bank vault from the building across the street? I understand fracking, but I am certainly not an expert. I do know that it is ugly, noisy, and disruptive to neighborhoods. I have also done enough critical research to know that we should all have grave concerns about the repercussions to our health and environment. I do understand that the city has plans to monitor the air, soil, and groundwater. I appreciate that. But what happens if evidence of contamination is found? What would be the next step? Honestly, I think even a little risk is too much. As of now, it is my understanding that we can do little to stop fracking due to the fact that in May 2016, the Colorado Supreme Court overturned Longmont's fracking ban. But I have hope about the elections in November, and hope about our collective power. I appreciate so much that my city council fosters these discussions. I would like to bring up one more issue to consider. Cub Creek Energy is a subsidiary of a German company called Deutsche Rohstoff AG. Fracking has been banned in Germany since 2016. Why are we letting foreign corporations use fracking to support our natural resources in Colorado, especially when their own homelands have banned it? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Ethan Green. Or is it Al Green? You can let me know.
Name is Ethan Al Green. I live at East County Line Road and 9th Avenue in Longmont. I'm a volunteer with Colorado Rising. Colorado Rising submitted over 171,000 signatures for the Safer Setbacks from Fracking initiative to the Secretary of State yesterday morning, far more than the threshold required to qualify for the ballot in November. Initiative 97 creates 2,500-foot buffer zones between oil and gas operations and homes and schools, water sources, and playgrounds. The distance of 2,500 feet, almost 1/2 mile, aligns with studies that show increased risk of negative health impacts within this zone. The setback distance also matches the emergency evacuation radius used by first responders when faced with explosions, fires, and toxic leaks. In 2017 alone, there were 15 oil and gas industry fires and explosions in Colorado, including the tragic Firestone home explosion that killed 2 men and severely burned a school teacher. More than 1,000 complaints have been filed in Colorado in a single year about contaminated water, inability to sleep or work due to noxious fumes and extremely loud noise, headaches, nosebleeds, asthma, and other grave health concerns related to fracking. We are proud and thankful for this monumental effort by the people of Colorado to create a common sense setback from this increasingly brazen and destructive industry. We are committed to protecting our neighborhoods from this explosive and toxic industrial development that risks our children's health and jeopardizes the safety of our homes. With 9 out of 11 bills killed in our legislature related to fracking, and hundreds of heartbreaking testimonies given to the COGCC with no action, it's time our citizens are heard with this ballot initiative. It is long overdue, and I am pleased with the outpouring of support from so many people statewide. I have 3 demands for you tonight. 1, I urge you to endorse Initiative 97 for 2,500-foot setbacks. 2, I urge you to use all of your corporate municipal powers, legally and otherwise, to delay any new oil and gas development in the vicinity of the city-owned open space community buffer zone and Union Reservoir until the November vote on Initiative 97 is held. 3, I urge you to begin making contingency plans for Initiative 97 becoming law and to examine oil and gas development plans accordingly for the potential placement within 2,500-foot safety zone. I believe most, if not all, of the fracking slated to happen around Union Reservoir would be prohibited by Initiative 97 becoming law of the land. It would be a tragedy and a shame for this irresponsible, dangerous, and destructive threat to our water supply to be grandfathered before the citizens of Longmont and across Colorado have the opportunity to vote on safer setbacks.
Thank you, sir. Jeff Thompson.
Jeff Thompson, 1616 Sumner Street. My comments are for the students tonight. If they're being taught critical thinking skills by the school district, then you should thank them for not laughing out loud tonight at your childish approach to the transportation issues the state is facing. All the students in this city would do well to read Mark Twain's short story, My First Lie, and How I Got Out of It. In these times, that story is the most important piece of literature our school district will fail to teach its students. Mr. Twain explained that the biggest and best lies are the unspoken lies we tell each other. And the biggest lie of all is that nothing's wrong. Students, ask your teachers to teach this story and let you discuss it in the context of climate change and what our city council is telling us by not saying anything about drilling under Union Reservoir. Ask your teachers to teach and let you discuss let you discuss it in the context of Ask your teachers to teach and let you discuss what your fellow students in Colorado have done to change the law and protect their futures. Ask them to teach you about the case of Martinez v. COGCC, Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. Our city council doesn't want you to know anything about this, so you should ask about it. By not saying anything about it, the city council would have you believe that production of oil and gas from lands owned by the city would have no effect on climate change or your futures. The city decided years ago to join the oil and gas industry and go for the money it can make by producing more oil and gas from city-owned lands. Union Reservoir is just a small part of it. Just this week, a group of Nobel Prize winners published a letter to government officials that reported the already well-known fact that no new oil and gas wells can be allowed if we are to avoid catastrophic climate change. By not saying anything about it, the city council would have you believe that drilling under Union Reservoir would be lawful. Drilling for oil and gas under Union Reservoir is unlawful unless it can be shown that it would not harm the public health, safety, and welfare, and the public welfare includes stable climate and thriving natural environment. Politicians that they are, the city council members can't wait to smile big toothy smiles and have photographs taken of themselves with you tonight, like they're on your side. But I think you will find, if you check these things out, they're smiling the big politician smiles while they're selling you out. That's not my entire comments, but I made copies for the students, and I really hope that they stand up and start fighting for their future, because nobody on this council will.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go ahead. It's been an hour and 15. Let's go ahead and take a short 5-minute break. Okay, we are now going to move on to special reports and presentations, and tonight is one of my favorite meetings of the year. We have the opportunity to meet and use our big pearly white politician grins to get our pictures taken with Japanese and Mexican students. It'll be awesome. So before we start, you'll notice that some of the children, yeah, it's your children, right, Jordan? Yeah, he's a child. They're cutting up cake that's left over from our sister cities reservations, a little get together. So I asked them to go ahead and cut up what's left. I see Karen Dyke is like, give me some, give me some. Yeah, I can hear she's salivating. I can see it from here, Karen. She wants some. I already had a piece before I announced it. So, all right. So, but at this time, let's go ahead and start with our sister cities introductions. Who would like to go first? Janice, turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley and City Council. We thank you again for your continued support. We are in our 28th year of an exchange with Japan and our 21st year with Mexico. We had 15 fantastic ambassadors this year representing Longmont. They were wonderful host brothers and sisters, and it is my hope that they have built lifelong friendships. While we are sad to see our new friends head home, our hearts are full. During the exchange, our students visited many local businesses, Crackpots, High Altitude Archery, the Longmont Museum and Cultural Center. They danced at the Senior Center. They participated in a work project at Longmont Summer Camp. They were in the Boulder County Fair. They went to Centennial Lanes and Sandstone Ranch today. They will visit Sunset Pool tomorrow, and they also had a lock-in last night at the Longmont Rec Center. In addition, they visited Rocky Mountain National Park, the Denver Capitol and Nature and Science Museum, and, of course, Waterworld. So it's my pleasure to introduce our delegation from Japan.
Come up. Yes, you, stand up. Get up. Come on, Fuyu. Come on. Yep, Fuyu, you. Bring your friends. Fuyu's staying with us this week.
Thank you for making a time for us to introduce ourselves. First, my name is Masahiro Hara, and I'm the saffron from Japan. And this is our team leader. His name is Yuya Oda. And this is Miwa Tanaka. She works at the city office. And these are my students. And most of them are from middle school. And first, I will make my speech. First, I would like to say that the Longmont people are very kind. Our students, before we were leaving Japan, we were afraid that they will not be able to make it and overcome their hardships and language barriers. However, thanks for the Longmont people, now they have a big smile and they are very happy and they have enjoyed their stay in Longmont. And this kind of bond between Longmont and Japan, I heard that it is very hard to sustain. However, I think that they will remember what they experienced through this program. Also, before our visit to Longmont, I and Yuya talked about leadership, nurturing our leadership, and also independence. You said about the bullet train in Japan. However, our students in Japan, they don't have independence in leadership now. And I think that American students have leadership, and I think they learned from how the American students have acted. So that's the most wonderful gift that we had from you. Thank you for welcoming us That's all for my speech.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Miwa Tanaka. I work at Chino City office. I have been working for this sister city program since last year. I appreciate your generous hospitality. We had celebrated our city 60 years anniversary. I thank you for sending a special message. I hope the friendship between Chino City and Longmont continues forever. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
I am Yuya, a chaperone. First, I have a gift for your mayor, Mr. Burgery. These are paperweights, the shape of the national treasure in Chino City, Masked Venus, and the Venus of Jomon. So here you are.
Oh, thank you. But before you go on, let me show people. That's what they look like.
Yeah.
So we got this. We'll use this. Don't get jealous, people. These are going to go in the city council office. We can all share. So we've got one there, right? And we've got there. So yep. Okay. What was it? The goddess of Mask and Venus of Shoman. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to pass those down to Councilmember Peck, and while you continue, we can look at those. They're very heavy.
All right, and we appreciate all of you in Longmont people, and especially we gratefully thank for board members and our host families. They have supported us anytime, anywhere, and with love and patience. I can say any word. I'm so delighted, and here, there, every student is so delighted to be here. Actually, absolutely, exactly, we can say we love Longmont.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Natsuki Uehara, 14 years old. My family is mother and father. Every day was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Huyu. I am 13 years old. My family has 5 members and 1 dog. I have an elder brother and a younger sister. I came to Longmont and it was very fun day every day. The homestay people were also very nice and gentle. It was 10 days of memories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lina. I'm 13 years old. I have my mother, younger sister, grandfather, and grandmother. My sister is 11 years old and she is 5th grader. I had a lot of fun for the 10 days. I'm glad I had lots of experience. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Sora. I'm 14 years old. There are 5 people in my family. I like them very much. Thank you for letting me stay with you the 10 days. I have a lot of fun during the 10 days. I love Longmont. Thank you.
Yeah, we love you.
Hello everyone, I'm Fumi. I'm 13 years old. My family is 6 people. Parents, older brothers, younger sister, and grandmother. Thank you for 10 days. I had a good time. See you again. Thank you.
Hello, I am Ito Honoka. I'm 13 years old. I have 4 members in my family, mother, father, and younger sister. Thank you for 10 days. That was very fun. I had a good 10 days. It was very nice to meet you. Thank you for the beautiful memories. See you again. Thank you. Hello, my name is Kagura. I'm 14 years old. My family has 5 members. I have older sister and young sister. I enjoyed every day because my host family was very kind. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Naoto. I'm 14 years old and a junior high school student. I have 5 people in my family. My parents and an older brother and an older sister. Longmont people and host family is very kind. Longmont is the best city.
You guys are awesome. Oh, God. Channel 8, snag that, please. Put that on a loop. That was awesome.
Okay, and now I'd like to introduce our delegation from Mexico.
All right. You don't get out of it, kids.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marta Lau. I am a board member of the City CICIS of Ciudad Guzman for the past 4 years. It is an honor to be the chaperone for Mexico. It was important for me to be a part of this program to strengthen these friendships and unite both nations. I am very happy to be able to meet the ambassadors and their families, as well as the Japanese ambassadors. I want to thank you, the city of the Longmont and the sister cities for all the support and welcoming youth open arms. Thank you to the families for the wonderful hospitality and wonderful experience. I love your city, food and tradition. Thank you for making me feel at home. Ciudad Guzman, sister cities, welcome you with open arms. You will always be coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Mayor Bagley, thank you for your attentions. Before say my discourse,
I want to give for the city.
What do you want to show it first? Let everyone see on TV. Show them what it is.
Okay, it's an edition for the A Brilliant Son of My City, Juan José Arreola.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know, Juan José Arreola is actually a famous Mexican author, and he's best known for a work about where he actually talks about a philosophical piece about society and people catching trains. And anyway, read it later. But go ahead.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Bagley. Members of the council, we are so glad to be here in Longmont. And I want to thank you for all the attentions. Also, I'm feeling proud to participate in this exchange. And for now that we have the best sister city that we can have. Congratulations to all for your conservation that you have city and you have. Congratulations also to all the ambassadors from the United States for being the people that are. Thank you for all receipts as you asked. You have been doing for many years. We have to have you back soon. At the Committee of Sister Cities of Longmont, thank you for all your attentions. Thank you to my president for trusting in me for coming here. And so, all Longmont is always welcome. Thank you for us.
Thank you, Carlos.
Well, hi, good afternoon. My name is Paco, and I live in Ciudad Guzman in Mexico. My both parents have already came to this city as chaperones, and also both of my sisters came. The oldest came 11 years ago, and now she's a doctor, and the other one came 7 years ago, and now she's a dentist. I want to thank all the people here for the hospitality that you had with us, especially to the family who has received me as a special guest. Also, I want to thank to the Sister City Association from Longmont and Ciudad Guzman and the governments of both cities, because these people made these trips possible. This is one of those experiences that changes people's life, because all people who have been on this trip had learned some things that grew their mind. In the future, I want to be an engineer in electronic technology and information, because my inspiration is the automatization and the construction of circuits and mechanisms for the normal activities that a person does, and make them simpler and efficient. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I introduce myself. My name is Emiliano Mejia. I am 14 years old, and I come from my beautiful Ciudad Guzman, the cradle of great artists, to share about our tradition in addition to break any stereotypes. Thank you for the opportunity to come to Longmont, Colorado. We hope that your visit has been present and that you enjoy the evening. As the famous painter Juan José Arreola, like the book, will say, Señores, yo soy de Zapotlán. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night. My name is Enrique de la Cruz Eustaquio. I'm 15 years old, and I'm currently in third year of middle school. I like to go out with my friends and play basketball. And I being an active member of the Red Cross. Also, I'm complete some academic competitions in which I have taken the first place. I'm very grateful for having had this incredible opportunity to participate in this exchange, to get to know other cultures and learn more about how to be in the way of living in the United States. The desire to carry out a great experience participating in this and living with my fellow companions to join me in this memorable experience. Finally, I would like to thank the Committee of Sister Cities, Longmont, for their hospitality and for receiving me in their country. And I thank the Committee of Ciudad Guzman for choosing me as one of the ambassadors and making this trip possible. Thank you.
Good evening to all here present. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Leslie Fernanda Gonzalez Carlos. I am 15 years old. I am going to start high school. I was born in Ciudad Guzman, and all my life I have lived there. I am very excited to be here. I had never left my country. This place is fantastic, and this country too. Although, of course, I don't scare in my Mexico. This is one of my best experiences. Hanging out with people from another North American country. The people are great, friendly, kind, and sharing with them a little about my Mexican culture. I'm very happy, thanks to Comité Sister City of Longmont, Ciudad Guzman, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Roberto Iván Estrada Hernandez. I was born in Zapopan, Jalisco, and I live in Zapotlán el Grande. I am 15 years old, and I finished my middle school education. I thank both the Committee of Sister Cities and all the people who have supported us to participate in this great experience. And finally, I thank our brothers from Longmont for welcoming us and receive us. We will miss you. Thank
We'll miss you too.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Edgar Garcia de Alba Partida, and I was born in Zapotlán el Grande, in Mexico, in the state of Jalisco. First of all, I thank for having the opportunity to attend the present exchange in order to strengthen the relationship between Ciudad Guzman and Longmont, Colorado, because I think this is an amazing opportunity to learn more about our languages and culture. I'm currently about to start my studies at the high school level, and I'm very excited. Sometimes I spend my time with family and friends, but I spend most of my time elaborating my projects and homeworks, as well as studying. I'm very happy to have the privilege of being today in front of all of you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good evening to all of you. My name is Ivonne Saray Valencia Alcaraz. I am 15 years old. I am a few days away from starting high school, but at this moment, I am very happy to be here with all of you. I was born and raised in Mexico, and I am proud of my roots. I am happy because you've given me the opportunity to meet this country. I have always liked to travel and see different places, people, and cultures. So today, I am very grateful to the people who made this possible, the Committee of Longmont Sister Cities and Ciudad Guzman. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great time. My name is Ana Margarita Ochoa Dávalos and I'm 15 years old. In the future, I would like to become the best mechatronic engineer and make innovations that help the planet. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity because I know this is a life-changing experience and only a few people can have it. I am deeply thankful with both city councils for making this possible, with the committees, with my family, for receiving me
in the best way they could do it, and with all others who have directly or indirectly been part of this. Thank you.
Every year, one of them makes me cry. I never know which one it's going to be, but does council have any questions for our guests?
No, but what we would like to do is the council, we have gifts for you to take back to your city councils.
Could I have the chaperones, please?
So what I was going to suggest is we do two big pictures or one big picture.
Yeah, one big picture.
We'll do one big picture and bring all the chaperones and ambassadors and city council up. We'll all stand in front of the dais, and Bob Ricchetti and Rigo Leal, and we can.
Thank you, Mayor.
We'll do it. All right. Plenty of room over here. Squeeze in. There's plenty of room right here. Yep. There you go. That sounds good. All right. Okay, good job. Gary, right here. Yeah, it's right there. Oh, hey, wait. Yeah, I do. All right, let's go. I'm waiting on you, Bear. Here, girls. Here you go. You can hold that. Here. There you go. Okay, okay, 1, 2, 3, go, smile. And then let's, with good cameras now.
How's that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I bet my wife I could keep him here till 9. I'm kidding. Yeah, that's true. No. All right. Hopefully, these will be brief. But, city manager, let's go on with, actually, no, we're going to not turn the time over to city manager. Let's go ahead with Jessica Erickson, the Longmont Economic Development Partnership. No pressure, Jess. Just let it flow.
I don't know what to do with this. Good evening, Mayor Bagley and council members. It's a tough act to follow. I'm here this evening to provide, well, for a couple reasons really tonight. Wanted to come to a study session, which strangely this is my first in the 3.5 years I've been here. But wanted to come to a study session so that we could have more of a conversation around the information that I'll be presenting with my second quarter report, as well as to start some dialogue around a 2019 contract for services for economic development, which I'll be starting to work on a proposal for with the city here in the coming weeks. So I will start with my second quarter report. Okay, we are the Longmont Economic Development Partnership. As I've noted before, we focus our work in 4 core service areas of advanced Longmont, advanced primary industry, advanced local business, and advanced startup community. You'll note that this is probably the only familiar slide that you'll see as I go forward with this. I did make some changes to our quarterly reporting based on feedback that I've received from council members, both in my past reports this year to City Council, as well as subsequent conversations with all of you. And so would love to get your feedback on the new and additional information that we're providing in this report. I do actually have fewer slides, even though the report is longer, because I just wanted to pull out some of that information to highlight it, but I'm happy to answer any questions relative to the report that was provided, even if it's something that doesn't appear on the slides that I'm going to show. So as I mentioned, we are the Economic Development Partnership focused on economic development in a variety of focus areas. We are funded to do the work of economic development in this city through a variety of both public and private sources. We are a public-private partnership organization. And so currently about 65% of our funding comes from the public sector and about 35% of our funding comes from the private sector. You can see the breakdown of that in this slide. For frame of reference, according to the 2017 International Economic Development Council study, communities with a population of our size generally have budgets, annual operating budgets from $500,000 to $1 million. And the average is about a 65-35 breakdown between public and private sector funding, with the 65% coming from the public sector for organizations and communities of our size. I'm going to start quickly with the Advanced Longmont focus area. This is really recognition of our role in the community as the lead organization for the implementation of the Advanced Longmont Economic Development Strategy, which is actually implemented by 13 different organizations focused on economic development across the community. And so we report annually on the results of that work. And so I don't have a lot of detail in regards to the results of that work, but all of the work that we do in our other focus areas is contributing to achieving the goals of the Advanced Longmont strategy. And if you'll recall, my last report was, or I'm sorry, my report 2 reports ago was the annual report of the results of the Advanced Longmont strategy from the previous year. So in our other core service areas of advanced primary industry, advanced local business, and advanced startup community, we have established some target goals, annual target goals for primary industry, that is to attract, relocate, or expand 10 primary businesses that will create 500 new well-paying jobs and invest $50 million in new capital investment, and to annually work to retain Longmont's existing primary employers and jobs. That goal is always 100%. I don't want to be the person that tells 10% of our existing businesses or jobs that we're not trying to retain them. Obviously, market forces, industry changes, larger federal economic conditions will impact that, but our goal is always to achieve 100% retention. With local businesses, we're annually trying to attract, relocate, or expand 10 that will create 50 new jobs and invest $10 million in new capital investment. I do want to be clear that these are goals for direct impacts of the work of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership and not overall goals for economic growth for the community. We fully recognize that there are things that happen in the community and also things that can happen as a result of, indirectly as a result of the work that we're not necessarily aware of. That can impact that. So this is just a gauge for us to know whether or not we're doing our jobs and having the direct impact that we want to have relative to economic development in the community. And with the startup community, we've really been focused on helping to develop the ecosystem here to foster entrepreneurial and innovative activity and support the launch of 10 new ventures that will create 20 new jobs in 2018. So I'll highlight some of the results both from a 3-year perspective as well as year-to-date in 2018. All of these are in the matrix that we have provided for all of the different work programs that we have that contribute to achieving those goals that I just mentioned. And so for the period of 2016 to 2018, which is what's included in your report, the direct impacts of the work of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership are that we've worked with 263 different primary industry prospects since 2016. So that's over 3 years. And we'll note that the contract deliverable for the city of Longmont is 50 per year. So we are outpacing that annually. We have worked with projects that have announced the addition of nearly 1,250 jobs to be created that have been or will be created as a result of those projects. Approximately $247 million in capital investment related to those projects, and over 1 million square feet absorbed, built, or under construction. When we pull out just this year to date, we've had 74 jobs announced by primary industry businesses that are projects that we've worked on, with 250 jobs pending announcements. These are projects that have told us that we've won, but they're not ready for us to tell the rest of the world that they're coming to Longmont or going in Longmont yet. And our existing pipeline of prospects, we have the potential to add an additional 875 jobs. And that could be this year, that could be next year. Some prospects that we work with are a 3-month turnaround. Some we've been working with since I started here 3.5 years ago. Relative to local businesses, 2016 to 2018, 56 jobs created and $6.4 million in capital investment. We've actually deployed $77,000 in grants. That's our primary program for supporting the creation and expansion of our local business sector. I will point out that directly serving the local business sector, providing resource and programming and focusing on local business sector, which is our businesses that are serving the local community, is relatively new to the Longmont Economic Development Partnership. It's a result of the contract that was created in 2014 to move all economic development services or contract all economic development services to the Longmont Economic Development Partnership. And so this is something that we've established over the last couple of years and are really starting to grow at this point, 3 years in. And so in 2018, of the projects that we worked on, they've announced 18 new jobs and $2.1 million in capital investment. Again, that's primarily direct return on the investment of these city-funded grants that we manage. And I do have to apologize, I made these slides myself, which is not one of my greatest talents. And then finally, we'll talk about the work that we do relative to the startup community. And really, our work over the last couple of years has been identifying ways to foster an environment of an entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Longmont, both in terms of what we can do here locally to support entrepreneurship and innovation, as well as how we connect to the rest of the region and developing a larger regional ecosystem. One of the results of that has been Longmont Startup Week, which was founded a number of years ago by Scott Converse and the Tinkermill, and had grown to a point that it was beyond the ability of the volunteer coordinators that were doing it before to manage. And so Longmont Economic Development Partnership, we recognized the importance of that event to our community and putting us on the map as a hub for entrepreneurship and innovation. So we took on the role of the lead managing organization and have grown that over the last couple of years. We're still tallying all the numbers from 2017. 2018. I'll have those for you on my next report. But we expect that you'll see that we've had over 3,000 attendees at Longmont Startup Week this year throughout the week. And then the second thing that we've been working on in partnership with the Community Foundation, as well as Startup Longmont, the Tinkermill, and the Boulder SBDC, is the development of a program that we'll be launching later this month called Innovate Longmont, that provides a path for local entrepreneurs with an idea to get from idea to business, and then potentially funding out of the entrepreneurial fund that sits with the Longmont Community Foundation. And so you'll note in the report that I provided that we do have some metrics associated with that, some measurable deliverables associated with that, but we haven't launched it yet, so we don't have anything to report in terms of results. Hopefully we'll be able to report on some applicants and some local entrepreneurs that have benefited from that program the next time I'm in front of you. So the general economic overview, currently 56,682 total jobs in the city of Longmont. We're projecting 2.3% job growth in 2018 over 2017, and that is on pace with Boulder County and the state of Colorado, and just like the rest of the state, far exceeds U.S. job growth. Currently, well, as of May, non-seasonally adjusted unemployment was 2.4% in the city of Longmont, and that's similar across the state and certainly in the Boulder County region. That low of unemployment, as we've discussed before, certainly presents its own set of challenges. We've seen 12.2% five-year job growth, which has outpaced national job growth, which was 7.9%. Sorry, I put 12.2 there. Outpaced national job growth by 4.3% over the 7.9% national job growth. And then when we look at our targeted industries and job growth there, 2017 to 2018, projecting 2.23% job growth based on the numbers that you see there. So I want to talk a little bit about where these numbers come from and how we use them. These are really trending numbers. These are numbers that we use to understand whether or not we have cause for concern, whether or not things are happening in the larger economy that are outside of our expectations and outside of our projections and potentially outside of our influence. These numbers do not necessarily reflect the direct impacts of the work of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership. The best example that I can give you of that is we're all familiar with the Smuckers Project. That project is coming to Longmont directly as a result of the work of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership, obviously with city staff and some of our other partners as well. We did all of the work for that, months of work for that in 2016. That project was announced in 2017. We added that to our impact numbers in 2017, but we won't see the results of that in these numbers until 2019, 2020, 2021. So we don't stand up here and claim to, or I don't stand up here and claim that Longmont EDP has had a direct impact on 12.2% 5-year job growth. We can report on what we have direct impact on, and we can also report on general economic trends, and we can make the correlation that the work that we're doing as a community relative to our economic development strategy and vision is impacting those numbers over the long term. And so that I'll answer any questions about my presentation and my report. I do want to make the point that the reporting that we've been doing over the last 3 years, as well as much of the work program that we do year after year, is related to the contract for services that we have with the City of Longmont. The contract for services that we have in 2018 was initially, with some minor adjustments since then, like the addition of managing the enterprise zone program, was initially conceived of in 2014. We are at very different economic times. We obviously have different leadership within the city than we had, or particularly on city council, than we had in 2014. And so Harold and I and Sean and I have talked about it is probably now time to have a conversation about what makes sense in current economic climate under current leadership and your vision for economic development. And I posed some questions to you in the council communication and the email I sent to you on Wednesday night to consider, and I'm hoping to get some feedback on those as we start the work of developing a contract proposal for economic development services in 2019.
Mayor Pro Tem. You are first.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, but I mostly have a couple of comments. First of all, I think your reports are getting better and better and more useful to us. And I want to thank you for that, even though you did all these slides yourself. They're just fine. I particularly like the fact that your grants are going up and up, which really, even though it seems like a small thing, if a business can get $2,000 sometimes, it's a huge thing for them. So it really does make a difference, and I think we've seen that. And so I appreciate the fact that we're doing that, you're doing that. I also want to thank you for Startup Week, which is getting bigger and bigger and more of a larger community in the state, and I think people from out of state sometimes coming to it. It's a very good thing for Longmont, and thank you, Mr. Converse, for starting it. I really value a lot the fact that you've had a lot of good speakers from national things. I forget the name of the guy who came to talk about localism this year. That was really excellent to get national speakers so we have a perspective on what people are doing outside of Longmont. And you had someone—
He's committed to Longmont now too, just after having been here, so.
Yeah. Several years ago, you had someone speak from the Brookings Institute, and she was a very good speaker. I'm sorry, I have a throat tickle. And she brought up, I mean, what she was talking mainly about was the future of AI and robotics and the sort of jobless future, which there's been a lot of talk about that lately, and it is, you know, I think we need to have as a community a conversation with with LEDP, the Chamber of Commerce, all the business leaders and school leaders, things like that, and take some kind of proactive view of what we're going to do 10 years from now and 20 years from now. So I would like to see that kind of in the mix for the future. I had a couple of questions. So on the second page of your cover page, how much LEDP is the administrator of the enterprise zone? How much is that fund for this particular area of the enterprise zone?
It's not a fund. It's a state of Colorado. It's a variety of state of Colorado income tax credits that a business qualifies for by locating within an enterprise zone and reinvesting in an enterprise zone area. So there are tax credits that can be earned for creating jobs, for providing health care, for training, for research and development, and for capital investment.
So it isn't really a fund. Okay.
No, there's not a limit on it.
And likewise, the opportunity zone, which is a new thing, the
Mhm.
opportunity zones, those are tax credits too, right?
The opportunity zone, no, it's a forgiveness of potential forgiveness of capital gains, deferment and forgiveness of capital gains for investments made within the opportunity zone areas.
Okay.
And that's one thing that I wanted to mention, and we had talked about having, and we'll hopefully have opportunity in the future to have a larger conversation with you. But in order to ensure that we leverage the potential of the opportunity zone to bring investment to our community that makes sense for our community and for the economic development goals and overall community goals of the community, there's a significant amount of work that needs to happen. And we are already doing that work. We pursued the designation and we've taken a leadership role in starting to work with Bruce Katz, with the State Office of Economic Development, with Enterprise, who we would like to have up here in terms of developing an investment prospectus, understanding what the opportunity is here, and understanding where we need to go to bring the funds into our community that are a good match with our community and the goals of our community in that opportunity zone area. And so that's one of the things similar to when we added the enterprise zone. We would like to, it's certainly not something that's a part of our current deliverable, but it was an opportunity for us to bring an economic development resource to the community. But that is going to take sometimes some human resources, some financial resources to pursue actually using that to the benefit of economic development in Longmont.
Yeah, I think it would be very good for the whole council to have a conversation, and of course the city manager and the city attorney to have a conversation about that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I just want to say, as an attendee of Longmont Startup Week, that the sessions I attended were wonderful. I especially liked the two smart cities-oriented sessions that I attended, and I think that both of them had some ideas in them for business development projects that would directly benefit the city as well as our entrepreneurial partners in that. So I hope that we can have a continuing conversation about that going forward, because there was some brilliant stuff there.
Dr. Waters.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Jessica, I think this is a big step in the right direction.
Thank you.
So I will echo Mayor Pro Tem Christensen's comments. I will assume that the targets you shared for 2018 will inform, reflect what we're going to do in 2019, and the numbers might adjust, but we would see similar kinds of performance targets tied to your goals in 2019.
Yes.
Terrific. You asked, I appreciate, by the way, you sharing questions that you wanted us to think about before we read your materials. I think that helps us guide our thinking. And so good on you for that as well. One of your questions was specifically about deliverables in the contract. And because you negotiate that with the city staff, you know, that's up to the staff. For me, for my purposes, as I look at this, you provided way more than I would expect to see in a statement of a deliverable. I mean, you listed all the things you would do to generate a marketing plan, a recruitment plan, a retention plan, et cetera. For my purposes, what would be good enough in a contract, although this is up to the staff, just a narrative, what the intent is in terms of the deliverables, the report, including what you've offered as quarterly reports, and then marketing and recruitment, et cetera. And then you've obviously detailed what you would do to produce those, which is probably more than I would need to see. But I'm just, if you wanted feedback on the on deliverables, I don't have any to add because it's it's a ton of work what you've laid out here.
Okay.
So, you know, I wouldn't add deliverables.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Jessica, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done for the enterprise zone. We would never have gotten that designation without you. The opportunity zone, we would have never had a chance at that if you hadn't been here. So I just want to say thank you for all the work you've done. That was not in your contract, and you did it anyway, and we will see big, big benefits from it. So I just want to say thanks.
Welcome. Thank you.
I just want to say I think you do a great job.
Thanks.
And I hope you stay downstairs forever, although I know you won't. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
I just wanted to say that's part of the conversation of restructuring the contract is really the evolution that we've gone through. For those council members that weren't or that were here when we had that first contract, to where we were coming in saying we need to make presentations, we need to do this. The reality is so much of what they're doing and what we call them up to say, hey, can you help on this, is not anywhere in the contract. It's just, it's something that's come up and they jump in and do it.
And actually, Jessica, so for those of you who don't know, she's on the first floor of the building. She rents on the first floor and we're on the third floor. She actually came up to my office and said, we're going to be speaking about my new contract, and I just want to give you, as the mayor, a heads up that it's really not even close to what the industry requires. And you guys should really ask the following of me. She actually began the conversation telling us that we're not asking enough of her. I just thought that was a unique data point. So don't worry, we will listen, Jessica. Thanks. Yeah, exactly right. No, but thank you for being honest. All right, let's go ahead and move on with a presentation on an update on the oil and gas drilling under Union Reservoir. Welcome, Dale.
Mayor Bagley and members of council, I'm Dale Rademacher, General Manager of Public Works and Natural Resources for the city. We're here this evening to return back to council with the information that you requested, that we conduct some additional research into the potential risks to Union Reservoir, in particular to the water quality of Union Reservoir as a result of the pending oil and gas development that council is aware is pending to occur north of the reservoir, outside of the city limits, as part of the agreements and contracts that the council executed earlier this year. And so staff has conducted research in a variety of different ways. We're here tonight to report on that. And with us tonight we have David Bell. So if you have wildlife or natural resources questions, he can certainly respond to those. Jim Angstead, our Director of Engineering. Ken Houston, our Raw Water Resources Manager. And Roberta Luna, who is the supervisor of our Water Quality Lab. And so we had a number of staff engaged in this effort, different professions looking at the issue and doing what we believe the council asked us to do. And so Jason Elkins, who you've heard from Jason before, he's going to give you the major part of the update tonight. And but again, we're all here to respond to any questions that the council may have, and aren't necessarily looking for any specific direction tonight. But of course, if you have that, now's the time to talk about it. Okay, Jason.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley, council members, Jason Elkins, civil engineer, Public Works, Natural Resources. Excuse me. Tonight I would like to present to you the information contained in the council communication titled Update on Oil and Gas Drilling under Union Reservoir. Tonight I will discuss the following items. Staff's report on research and analysis of existing studies as it pertains to hydraulic fracturing around and under water resources. That includes aquifers, rivers, streams, ditches, and reservoirs. I will also report on staff's report on the interviews that were conducted with local reservoir companies and ditch operators throughout northern Colorado. Staff's discussion with environmental consultants on the issue, and will present a monitoring program for the Knight and Olander site that can be used as an early detection program. And finally, I will present to you staff's recommendations going forward based on the information mentioned above. So back in December 2016, the EPA released a study called Hydraulic Fracturing for Oil and Gas, Impacts from the Hydraulic Fracturing Water Cycle on Drinking Water Resources in the United States. It's a mouthful, and I'm surprised I didn't try to make it into an acronym. So the goals of that study were to assess the potential impacts from hydraulic fracturing operations. And the scientific information contained in the report can help federal, state, and local agencies make informed decisions. So the complete study is available on the EPA's website. It's 1,200 pages long. So for staff's discussion and the recommendations and the basis of this presentation and the council communication, staff reviewed the executive summary of that. And after lengthy discussions, staff did find the prevailing finding of the study is that there is no widespread impacts to hydraulic fracturing as it pertains to Union Reservoir and surface reservoirs. Having said that, the study did identify 5 potential impacts, and the reason why city staff feels that the residual impact to Union Reservoir is minimal will be discussed here momentarily. I want to show you a slide now that was one of the tools that the staff used to try to determine the impacts that was identified in the study. As you can see to your left, the night site, once completed, will be a 6.5 acre pad site. It is upstream of Union Reservoir, located in the Union Reservoir drainage basin. The groundwater flows, as we believe, is flowing towards Union Reservoir. But as you can see, it's almost a half-mile removed from Union. The other site, Olander, once completed, that will be a 4.5 acre well site, and it is over a mile away. And as you can see, the groundwater flows, as we believe, is flowing to the southeast and away from Union Reservoir. So the EPA study identified 5 potential contamination risks with regards to hydraulic fracturing operations. Staff reviewed all 5 and identified only 2 that could be applicable to the Knight and Olander sites. The first one is water withdrawals for hydraulic fracturing. So what that is saying is for stressed water supplies during a drought, water that would be used for hydraulic fracturing could pose a potential impact to those water supplies. City of Longmont does not allow its water to be used for hydraulic fracturing, so again, this one doesn't affect us. Disposal of improperly treated fracturing, wastewater, and surface waters, or 2 surface waters. And so what this one is saying is that those hydraulic fracturing fluids are disposed of. They're treated, they're recycled, and they're reused, and at some point they do go back into the water supply. City of Longmont does not allow that, and that is strictly regulated by the state and by the federal government. So again, this does not really pertain to Union Reservoir. Disposal or storage of fracturing wastewater in unlined pits. So the key word there is pits, where they literally excavate a pit in the earth, and then they store hydraulic fracturing fluid, and then they use that fluid to then pump down into the wellbore, frack the formations, and then all that contaminated fluid would then come back to surface and then would be stored in those unlined pits. The state does not allow that. What Cub Creek and what most industry professionals are using is a closed loop system. Everything's fully contained within containers that are meant to hold fluid. It gets pumped into the well, and anything that comes out of the well goes back into the containers in which it was supplied in. Nothing is ever supposed to be in an open pit. So now going on to the 2 that staff did identify that could potentially be of risk to Union Reservoir is the injection of fracturing fluids in wells resulting from a failure of wellbore integrity. So wellbore integrity is the key word there. So if you look at this next image, you can see this is a typical casing design. And so you have the groundwater that could be anywhere from 5 feet deep to hundreds of feet deep to thousands of feet deep. And the whole point of the surface casing, which you can see identified there, is to protect those groundwaters. So that casing is steel casing. It's supposed to be deeper than the groundwaters, and it's sealed off from the formation with the annular space filled with concrete. So should that steel fail, should the concrete fail, should a combination of things fail, should it be a bad cement job and you don't get a good seal, you could potentially have, when you pressure up the formation to frack it, you could potentially have some of that fluid channeling its way up into other formations outside the production zone. So while that is a possibility, the risks are minimal. There are safety measures in place and industry standards that will help curb those types of potential risks. Sure, sorry. You want me to start over from the beginning?
No, you're good.
Teasing. And so you can see right here, I tried to identify where the surface casing is to try to give you an idea of should we have a wellbore integrity issue and fracking fluid was to get into the groundwater. That groundwater could then leach to like a ditch, and that ditch could then flow into Union Reservoir. So there is a potential for that. The next potential is surface spills during hydraulic fracturing operations that result in high volume, high concentration. And so while that is a potential risk, from the slide I showed you previously, how far removed Union Reservoir is from those two well sites, the chances of the fluid moving across land to sheet flow down into reservoir, it's not going to happen. But the potential of having a surface spill that is large enough or highly concentrated enough, it could go into the groundwater, which again could make its way to Union Reservoir. And so based on those two findings, staff does recommend establishing baseline conditions out there at Union Reservoir and at the Knight and Olander sites prior to drilling. And we also recommend the continued monitoring throughout the duration of all oil and gas operations at those two pad sites. Overall, staff did believe that the EPA study was rigorous and was generally well received. So the next element I would like to discuss is staff's research on interviewing and discussing with reservoir and ditch operators who do have oil and gas facilities located under their reservoirs and under their water resources, and their experiences as it pertains to that. So staff interviewed reservoir operators that represent close to 100 reservoirs. 4 of the largest reservoirs that supply drinking water to 300,000 people were interviewed in this process. One operator spends $150,000 annually on water quality testing, and that includes the detection for VOCs. Any detection of VOCs would be an underlying indication that there would be BTEX, which would be a constituent from oil and gas. So that's benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene. Those are the real nasty carcinogenic stuff that we typically see in our investigations. And of these operators interviewed, 0 reported any incidents from drilling and hydraulic fracturing operations, not one. And as mentioned in the council communication, there was repeated concern from ditch operators that there was reported instances of contamination. Now, I use that, their definition of contamination is different than ours. The contamination is not health related. It's not a health or environmental concern. It's simply the soil borings coming out when they're performing the directional boring. So they do directional boring for all utilities, under roads, under ditches, gas lines, water lines, fiber optic lines. This is fairly common practice. They use water that come out of fire hydrants, so the water that they use is drinkable. Any additives that they add to the water, such as bentonite clay to stabilize the wellbore and stuff, it's all within the National Sanitation Foundation's regulations for domestic wells. So it's not a true contamination. It's just simply that there's sediment in their ditch, they're not cleaning it up, and it gets washed down into their water supplies. So I'd like to show you, Longmont is not alone. We're not the only one who has a reservoir with fracking operations going on beneath their water supplies. This is Milton Reservoir. From an aerial view, it looks very nice, clean, and pristine. From the COGCC's website, you can see that there's dozens of directional and horizontal wells that run beneath the reservoir. These wells have been fracked. You can even see over on the right-hand side, you have oil and gas facilities 50 feet from their shorelines, and they've reported no instances. The next one I'd like to show you is Foster Reservoir. Again, it's a very nice reservoir. Without looking beneath the surface, you would never know that it has a dozen horizontal wellbores going underneath it that have been fracked. And again, no adverse impacts to their reservoir. Some of these wells here are 7,000 to 8,000 feet, typical for horizontal wells in this formation, and is representative of what Cub Creek is proposing to do under Union Reservoir. And while these wells have only been producing for the past couple years, on the previous slide, some of those directional ones that are shorter, those have been producing for decades and has not had a reportable incident. So to best monitor the conditions at Union Reservoir, staff will systematically continue back T testing. So back T testing, that's the coin phrase, that's the testing method used to detect coliform. And that has become the industry standard for determining drinking water's sanitary quality as regulated by the EPA. What back T testing tells you is if there's any chloroform in the water, that is an indication that there's probable presence of other known pathogens, and pathogens are disease-causing organisms. And since 2015, there have been zero high count test results that led to the swim beach closure. So the swim beach could potentially be closed after a significant storm event that introduces a vast amount of surface water and urban drainage into the reservoir within a short period of time. That has not happened since 2015. But in the likely event of substantial storm event, staff will go out and will pull samples from Union Reservoir, not just on the shoreline, but out within the actual reservoir itself. We'll pull samples from Oligarchy Ditch, which is the ditch that feeds Union Reservoir, and the Union Reservoir Drainage Basin, which, as I mentioned earlier, is where the night site is located. Staff will also staff will perform an initial investigation at the drill sites. Before mobilization, before drilling begins, we will do that one of two ways. We will ask Cub Creek directly, can we go onto your well pads before you actually start drilling and mobilizing, and can we pull samples? In the event that they say no, we will work with the landowners to place our permanent monitoring wells within the immediate vicinity of those well pads. And when I say immediate vicinity, when they stake their limits of disturbance, we will be 5 feet on the other side of that line. We will be as close to it as we can. We will put monitoring wells upstream and downstream. We will test for soil vapor, groundwater, air quality, everything that we've currently been doing with our plugged and abandoned investigations thus far. We will work with Terracon to perform these investigations as kind of established in the past. There's potential for new tools to be used for real-time monitoring. I know I've discussed this before, that we're working with researchers and new upcoming companies that are trying to establish new technologies for this very type of investigation. Staff has also come up with a conceptual level for a comprehensive investigation. And this would go above and beyond anything that we've done so far, and it would not remove our current investigations. It would just simply add to it. So what we would do is staff would be evaluating with consultants and the Union Reservoir Company to develop a long-term comprehensive investigation that goes above and beyond anything that we have currently done thus far. The comprehensive investigation could potentially include the following elements: an effort to document groundwater movement, groundwater quality, soil quality, and gather information regarding geological formations such as fractures, faults, terrain within a defined area around Union Reservoir. To implement this program, it would have to be a multidisciplinary effort. At a minimum, you need a limologist, which is somebody who studies lakes, geologists, chemists, environmental engineers, and scientists. The program would establish sampling locations, sampling frequencies, and analytical parameters, which over time would probably evolve as new technologies emerge. The City of Longmont would likely need to partner with a university or a research foundation to assist in the characterization of produced water from hydraulic fracturing operations. At this conceptual level, staff approximate the cost of initiating this investigation at around $300,000 with continuing costs for many years. And that sounds like a lot of money, and chances are over the years it will probably only increase. But there are a potential for some EPA brownfield grant monies. And I'm not talking on the order of $10,000, $20,000. I mean to pay for the entire investigation. And so staff will work with consultants and stuff to apply for some of these EPA brownfield grants, and should we get funding for that, we'd be able to execute that sooner rather than later. The Union Reservoir Company has also voted to participate with the City of Longmont in our evaluation of these efforts. So as mentioned, this comprehensive investigation would be in addition to our baseline investigation. So now I'd like to give you a real quick update on the current investigations that we've already done. So far, we've done 8, and I'd like to kind of review those with you now. And as you remember, back, I believe, in November of 2016, staff approached council and asked for $96,000 in contingency funds. And this time, I'd like to show you what that $96,000 has achieved us so far. So the George Maida well, that one's located on city property. It's located on the Ute Creek Golf Course. It's immediately adjacent to private property. Our baseline investigation usually runs about $16,000. This one was about $10,000 over because we had to go onto private property to make sure that we fully encompassed that well site. And again, found no contamination. Homeowners were extremely happy that we were doing that. Longmont 810K, that well was recently plugged and abandoned. We went out immediately after plugging, after remediation was complete. We performed our investigation. Everything was all clean. Mariama number 1, this one's on school district property. Again, everything came out all clean. And partnering with the school district, they were extremely pleased and fully support the city in its investigative efforts. Mary number 2, this one's over by a development. Again, that one came out clean. Tabor number 1, this is going into a future development. Again, this one came out clean. Tabor number 7. Tabor number 7 is actually an active well, which was recently on a piece of property that was annexed into the city. So while this map, the city limits has not been updated, that one technically is now another active well within the city. But we went out there and did an extensive investigation on that one, and again, no contamination. Wortman number 1, this one is immediately adjacent to developed property, and with another one to the east that's currently being built out now. And again, the residents there were extremely pleased. When I was knocking on doors and meeting with residents and discussing this investigation, I got no pushback whatsoever. And in fact, very many people were extremely happy that we were doing this. Yes, Wortman number 1 was clean. Rider number 1 gets a gold star because it was not clean. So we did find contamination there.
Or yellow caution star.
Just thought I'd call it yeah, colors matter. So
words matter here, my friend.
So this one, we did find contamination. We did report it to the COGCC, and based on that and some other alleged violations, the COGCC did issue top operating an alleged notice of alleged violation, and based on that, they have an approved remediation plan with the COGCC. Staff is currently coordinating with top operating to grant them access to the rider site, which they now have. We're also coordinating with the school district because although the Rider 1 site is located on city property, the contamination has plumed onto school district property. So it's a little bit more complex than just going out there on city property. But the remediation effort consists of excavation, removing any and all contaminated soil, having that soil disposed of at a proper facility, having it cleaned and remediated, and having new imported soil brought in, and of course oversight from the COGCC, oversight from city staff, and probably another round of testing throughout those operations. Questions?
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I hope I can get these questions asked in the right order so that they make sense. Let's see. So first, as to the Olander and Night Well sites where drilling is expected to commence soon, do we know at this point when drilling will commence, and will the time between now and then be enough to allow the measuring that you discussed to establish a proper baseline for comparison?
Councilmember Martin, yes, there's substantial time. We anticipate Cub Creek to be out there mobilizing probably this fall, and we can mobilize within a couple weeks.
This fall is a pretty wide window. In particular, will
I don't have an exact date at which they'll be out there. They're still going through the planning process. I do talk with one of their engineers who's currently trying to get an access road built, and so they're weeks away from even submitting that to the city for review.
Okay, so what are do you think the odds are that we could that they will be delayed until after the fall election?
I'm not a betting man, but I think there's good chances that November, December timeframe, they might actually be drilling.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, next question.
Brad, is that accurate?
The other reservoirs that you showed us, were those in Colorado?
Yes.
And
the two that I
yes.
showed you, one's directly east of Longmont.
In Weld County?
Yes.
Yeah. And you reported no contamination on those, but were there baseline measurements established for those bodies of water before drilling began?
I could not answer to that.
So
was that ever discussed, Ken?
Doesn't want to.
I've got a call on you. That it just knows. Ken Hewson?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Ken Hewson.
Oh, there we go.
Water Resources Manager.
Yeah.
Yes, I conducted the interviews initially, and in talking with the manager of the reservoir site, the first one that they showed, Milton Reservoir, they have done, for years, water quality testing. Their system serves about 300,000 people, their drinking water, for a lot of the communities on the northern side of the Denver metro area. So they've been following their water quality for years. They also have been following it as part of the oil and gas operations that are occurring underneath. They have numerous reservoirs that are drilled. And so they're the ones where we had reported they have about $150,000 a year testing program that they use to do their testing on.
Okay, so then the actual yardstick is this water meets standards for potable water.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I have a partial answer for this question already, but where does the fracturing wastewater go from, or where will it go from Olander and Knight? I understand you're using a closed loop system, but eventually they have to take that water away, and where does it go?
The precise destination for that disposable water, I'm not exactly sure, but that is highly regulated, and they will chime in here.
It's an injection well. Mayor Bagley and members of council, the produced water that comes back from most of these wells is re-injected in injection wells. I believe the closest one to Longmont is in the Platteville area. I also believe that the companies are researching and implementing ways to reuse the water, meaning that they're sending it through a treatment process. What I don't know today is what percent of the water is treated and reused versus what percent is sent down an injection well. But I know it's a combination of those two efforts.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rademacher. You mentioned the back-T testing that goes on and that is intensified, I guess, after a storm or something that increases groundwater flow into Union Reservoir. Yeah. Sorry, surface water, not groundwater. I understand that that is for testing for bacteria. What does that have to do with the possibility of surface contamination of oil and extraction fluids of various sorts?
Again, Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Martin, all the staff is trying to do there is to provide the council with the background on the current testing that we have done for years at Union in connection with having a swim beach.
Mhm.
They are not otherwise connected.
Okay.
I believe the baseline testing that we are recommending we commence with will be pulling water and will be sampling for the different constituents that are more associated with oil and gas, the BTICs.
Mhm.
And I think it's fair to say, and I don't want the council to be surprised when we bring back results from the baseline today
Mhm.
that show that there is some level of oil and gas contamination in the reservoir, which, by the way, is going to occur in every reservoir that has any sort of boating activity go on it.
Mhm.
And given that Union Reservoir is downstream of a significantly large area, the urban area of the city of Longmont. So if you think of all the parking lots and all the
Sure.
the different facilities in the city that drain into the oligarchy, I would hope over time that we as a community could do better in protecting Union Reservoir with our own practices within our city, whether it's at the local gas stations, whether it's at parking lots. And that's part of our MS4 permit compliance on our stormwater protection program. And that is a growing area of work, and it's one that I think I would expect that we will have more effort in. But there is no real connection, to answer your question, between, other than we wanted to point out that is the testing that we're doing now in connection with operating a swim beach.
Sure. So, but you are doing testing for the organic volatile contaminants of various sorts, so that the baseline you will establish is what does the what kind of organics does the surface flow from the city produce before
Correct.
Drilling begins?
Correct.
So that's the
our
baseline?
intent. Yes.
Okay. And so then we will have to find significant increases over that level before we can claim contamination from the extraction processes.
And on top of that, that is one way that you
Mhm.
can identify the source. You can also identify it by the type of gas or BTEX that you're sampling for.
So there'll be some overlap, probably.
There are absolutely ways to test for those, their origin, whether or not their origin is from deep formations or if their origin is from a surface contamination, say of a parking lot.
Mhm.
We'll be
Okay.
able to tell the difference.
Terrific. Okay. And then the last question that I have is, if contamination of Union Reservoir as up that originates from activity at Olander and Knight sites occurs, what recourse do we have?
Again, Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Martin, that's a complicated question. It will, of course, depend on the magnitude and the duration of what's occurring. But certainly, if you think of the well activities that are occurring in different areas around the world, it's not unusual to have well activities occurring under bodies of water, whether it be the Gulf of Mexico or it be lakes in Louisiana. What would happen if contamination is detected? You would shut down the well field, and you would systematically go through and figure out which of the wells, if it's multiple wells or if it's a single well, and you would plug and abandon, you would cease production on that well and you would encase it. No different than you would plug and abandon it if you found it to be, say, contaminating the water aquifer. You would take the same actions. Now the difference here is probably going to be is the time lag between the failure occurring and it becoming known in the reservoir. I would hope that there would be evidence of a well failure or well bore failure long before it reached that extent. But it's difficult for me to say as a an engineer for the city. I think going forward, those will be things that we'll be wanting to better understand as well.
Yeah, and I was referring both to surface flow contaminations from that activity as well as from the admittedly rarer possibility of an error or a break in the deep well structure. But
and thank you for the clarification. A surface flow would be dealt with similar to a skimming operation that you would see with say a failure of an oil tanker or something offshore. You first work to contain that, and so the containment activities would be happening on the north end of the reservoir, and you would commence with a cleanup. And it is not cheap, and it is not easy to do.
Is that the responsibility of the extraction company, Cub Creek, in this case?
Absolutely. The liability would lie with the producer.
If they have the money. That was my next question. I'm sorry this is such a long series. Do we have any way of getting them to post bond or anything like that for those eventualities?
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Martin, I believe the only bonding authority, and I'll look to Eugene to confirm that with me, is through the state as the agency responsible for the permitting of the drilling activity, and they are required to post bond. Many would suggest that the bonds that are posted are inadequate for a, and again, I don't want to sort of editorialize on it too far, but we can all probably wonder about the adequacy of the bonding. So that's one alternative. The other one is of course, the Attorney's Full Employment Act of litigation to achieve the outcome that you want.
Okay, thank you. And supposing that we did discover evidence of a well integrity issue, one of the ones that would require the plugging and abandoning of the well that was causing the problem. How do I say this delicately? The regulatory body on the state that has to order that following our protests is not necessarily as sympathetic to the surrounding residents as it is to the extraction industry itself. How long would it take us to get the order for the plugging and abandoning executed in a situation like that?
Again, a good question. Difficult for me to be precise, but we can look back on the recent case that we had, whereby through our ongoing monitoring at the Ryder site, we identified a problem. We provided that information to the state toward the end of the year, and they acted, I believe, within 6 months.
I think it was the notice of alleged violation was given.
But they put the company on notice sooner than that.
Yes, they did.
The point is, they acted. They probably have statutory requirements that they're required to act within. And again, we can probably debate: is that too long? Is that too much time? What I will say is that if we hadn't done the work that we did at Ryder, there would be no remediation happening out there right now.
Sure.
I think that's an accurate statement. But for our diligence and vigilance, I don't believe it would be happening. And so I'm hopeful that other communities will follow the lead that Longmont has set and take it upon themselves, that responsibility as well, to protect their community.
I agree, and I think that it's an excellent thing what you're doing, and you are protecting us by these means. I would like to add the Ryder well was either already abandoned or near the end of its useful life when all of this happened, and the response was very good. If we have a similar situation with a new well at the peak of its production, do you anticipate that it'll be more difficult to get action in that situation?
Depends on who's counsel and how loud we are. we got their attention over Ryder pretty damn quick.
I believe you're going to get attention with environmental damage.
Okay.
Irrespective of the production on any one particular well.
Yeah. You understand that I'm asking the questions that our constituents want to hear the answer to.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Good job.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Dale, I want to thank you and your staff. You did an excellent job with all these interviews, and I know it was a lot of work, so thank you. But I do have some questions. Of all of the reservoirs that you showed us, that you said were there was no contamination, what kind of monitoring are they doing? Are they doing just the BACT, or are they doing the VTEX monitoring? Are they actually checking for carcinogens from fracking fluid?
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Peck, really the only significant testing is being done by the reservoir operator that owns Milton Reservoir and a number of other reservoirs. Most of the reservoirs are owned by private ditch and reservoir companies, and they certainly don't have either the assets or the technical knowledge or the ability to do much technical testing like we're talking about tonight. They do have ditch operators and reservoir operators that are out at these reservoir sites almost daily, and so really it would be more visual, it'd be more in the field observation.
So they're not testing for any carcinogens from fracking fluid
at
all?
Not to the level we're talking about here.
So that doesn't really help us as far as trying to decide whether the fracking fluids, not just from groundwater contamination or spills, but actually from those lines that are going under the reservoir. Are they leaking fracking fluid? And that's my concern.
And Councilmember Peck, you're correct. Again, the only example that we could find of another reservoir company that is in the business of providing water supply, potable water supply, is that company that is taking those actions, and I consider it to be a fairly rigorous program. Ken is correct. The other owners of the reservoir companies are typically for irrigation, and the farmers typically look to see if the lake is full, and they run the water. Now, is that the best practice necessarily? Could it also be an opportunity for us to assist and partner in that arena? It could be, because we're also talking about our food production, and again, I think as the broader community, I would guess that most of those companies would welcome a partner like a Longmont that would come forward and say, would you like assistance in looking at whether that be technical assistance or other assistance? We just haven't gotten there yet. But could we get there? I think we could.
So my point is, though, as far as the other reservoirs being contaminated, I don't expect Longmont to go out and help them uncontaminate. I want to know exactly what we are getting into in Union Reservoir. And if the other reservoirs are not testing for VTEC or carcinogens, then those reports don't really address what we're trying to do going forward. And that is my point. So also the EPA, on their executive summary, on the bottom of page 41, it says, the following combinations of activities and factors are more likely than others to result in more frequent or more severe impacts. And then they have bullet points, the fourth one being injection of hydraulic fracturing fluids directly into groundwater resources. The above conclusions are based on cases of identified impacts and other data, information, and analysis presented in this report. So my point is, after reading this whole report, the EPA hasn't taken a stance. They're not saying it's good or bad. They're waiting. They're waiting to see what happens in 10 years. And that's my problem right there, is that nobody has really had any conclusions. Nobody's really testing for the carcinogens. And from our conversations earlier in the year, the contamination in the reservoir now is cleanable. You can clean it up from fertilizers, from things that, but can we clean carcinogens out of the water? And that is my question. I haven't found that information anywhere. Can we do that? If those pipes that are fracturing the shale or the rocks leak, do we have the ability to clean those carcinogens out of the water?
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Peck, first of all, I'm not an expert on it, but my history tells me, or again, another example that I would use of contamination of groundwater with hydrocarbons, whether it be gasoline or oil, can be found within our own community with all the underground storage tanks. And if you all remember, over the last 20 or 30 years, they had to be pulled and removed because they were leaking. Mm-hmm. And they were leaking into the groundwater under our very community. 17th and Main has had stripper wells. And so what you have to do is you have to remove the surrounding water, whether it be the surface or the groundwater, and you have to strip the contaminants from the water and re-inject it. So is there technology to do it? Yes. Is it cheap? No. And it's expensive.
Well, everything is expensive. I can't think of anything in this world that's not expensive.
But it's valuable for the water supply, right?
Yeah.
Exactly,
I mean,
I'd agree. Right.
We need to make sure that if we do frack these, we're going to take on the expense of cleaning that water because it's too big of a risk. This is the health of our community. And until we have the ability to clean that water if something happens, I can't get behind it. I just can't. Morally and ethically, to put more carcinogens into water that's going to be our household water, I just can't get behind it. Yes, we've had in the past problems, but if we don't learn from those and continue to put the same type of poisons in, then we haven't learned our lesson. So if you can come back and say, we absolutely have the ability and the money to clean this if there's a leak, I'll be on board. But until then, I'm not.
All right. But before we keep going, just want to remind everybody, we've been dealing with this issue for almost 7 years now. We've done everything we can to get it out of Longmont, and this is like trying to keep an intersection safe by installing video cameras. And our solution to the wreck is, well, how quick can we get out there to pick up the wreck? So just keeping in mind, none of us are for it. This is just something we're just monitoring. We have no say in this. So we're talking about something we really can't impact other than monitor it. And if there's a problem, we do what we can. So there's really no issue here that we're discussing other than just our general feelings. So we're just keep in mind that we're really not, if there's a motion, let's make it. If not, let's thank the staff and get on with it. Mayor Pro Tem? Try again.
All right. So I do want to thank you both for a very good update. I found the hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas impacts from the hydraulic fracturing water cycle on drinking water resources in the United States from the EPA to be actually a very good thing. However, it's only talking about water. And as I wanted to thank the people who showed up to talk on this issue, Ed Granados, Angie Roberts, I'm not sure I've got everybody's names right, Ethan Green and Jeff Thompson, because it's important for everybody to voice their concerns. And I hope this will, your presentation will help quell some of what the citizens of this town want to know, that we are monitoring not just the water, but the soil and the air. And that's what we need to be doing, is continuing to get a baseline, as you suggest, because otherwise we have nothing to measure against. And also to have an ongoing program. Now, the problem right now is, of course, that we are several $1 million short on our budget, so we have to figure out how to do both, because it really is critical that we keep monitoring to hold people accountable, because the entity supposed to be controlling this stuff in the state clearly does not. And so we have to do this ourselves. I would urge you to work with universities to do this, because we might save some money. And also, as you said, look into getting grants from the EPA to do this monitoring. But it's really, it's critical that we, to do the monitoring. And I want to thank Director Rodemaker for bringing up the other issues of what, it's not just the gas and oil industry, it's all of us who take our old oil and throw it on in the alley, or spray toxic pesticides all over the place because we're too lazy to dig it out by hand, or who broadcast it all over the place. When our soil and our water and our air are contaminated, we're dead. You know, we can't, Director Rodemaker knows very well, because he comes from a farming background. If your soil is no good, it's, you know, we're out of luck, and we can't, there's nothing we can eat from the soil around here. The farming industry, the agricultural industry in Colorado is billions of dollars of economic interest. And if we destroy that's our history in Longmont, if we destroy that, what kind of town are we, you know? So when I was first looking at this, the water thing, I thought, well, this is only dealing with the water. But it was good to hear from you that the soil and the air are being monitored. And it's really important, as Mr. Granados talked about, monitoring the air, not just at Boulder Reservoir, but specifically here, because this is specifically where we're breathing the air in it. Trying to grow things from the soil. But if all of us took a little more care, and industry took a little more care with all the pesticides that wash down all of the oil and gas, and you know, the motorboats running through the through the Union Reservoir, we would have a cleaner thing. It's not just the oil and gas industry, but they are certainly responsible for that. And we do need bigger bonds, because, you know, it's really a pittance that we collect, and it doesn't resolve the problem. And it's a risky business. I'm not fond of this business, but it's a risky business, and many people, wildcatters and bigger places, go out of business, and then, you know, they're just gone. That's why we're having to cap all these orphan wells right now, and the taxpayers of Colorado are paying for this. I don't want the taxpayers of Longmont to be paying for it either, and that's what's going to happen if we don't hold them accountable. So I thank you for all of your hard work and your monitoring, and I hope this will address some of the issues of the citizens, for the citizens of Longmont.
Could I add to that?
Sure.
Mayor Bagley, Mayor Pro Tem Christensen, thank you for bringing that up about the air quality. As part of our 2019 budget request, which you've probably reviewed for the oil and gas investigations, as you can see from that map, yes, we've completed 8. We still have a lot of work to do. And what that map doesn't show is what we intend to do for air quality monitoring. right now, what we have been doing, and the gentleman who addressed council earlier today was asking where the reports were. There are no reports, but that's what we're looking to do. Everything that we've done on so far for air quality has been on a lower level, and what we're looking to do is expand on that and make it a more robust system where it's actually reportable, something that we could actually hand the COGCC or the EPA, and something that could actually be used for enforcement. There's also approximately 9 miles of gathering and flow lines that we will be inspecting as well, not just for integrity, but also as part of the air quality monitoring. And so that's what we're projecting to try to accomplish in 2019.
I think part of it, to add to this, to tie into the economic development conversation, there's also some local entrepreneurs that are developing technology to engage in this, and they've asked to be connected to these guys so that they can work collectively in bringing something to bear. Or the local entrepreneurs have asked to be connected to Jason and Dale so they can talk about that and look at other opportunities. So that's another connection that we have to make.
Councilmember Waters.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I was going to ask the question that you just answered, so I appreciate the fact that we don't have reports but intend to make them available. Council Member Martin asked about the timing, or what you would anticipate in terms of actual drilling on the night site in particular. As I noticed, it's within 2,500 feet of the north end of the reservoir, but I'm sure it's closer than that to structures out there. What are the implications if Prop 97 were to pass? What are the implications for these two well sites or drilling sites?
I don't know.
I'm going to toss that to Eugene. I don't know I don't know.
Well, is it fair to assume that we have to rethink all of our assumptions about where they're going to drill and when they're going to drill and what their options are? Because they would not be outside of the 2,500 foot setback from other structures, occupied structures.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. So I focus on things in front of me that are pressing. I don't follow the legislation. I haven't looked at the language and whether companies who already have permitted well sites would be continue to have those locations.
Let the record show they threw the question to you. I was asking them. I wasn't asking you. So
I have plenty on my plate to not look at potential ballot measures.
Unrelated to questions, but related to the reference to working with a university partner to do a rigorous study, right? If you're going to go do a peer-reviewed study, you're going to have to meet high standards for research, which I appreciate. Do you have a university candidate?
We have two, CSU and CU. We know research with both universities. That we have begun discussions with them.
Well, that's good. You have partners willing to work, and you are or not certain about funding sources. EPA, you've mentioned.
That is uncertain. That is something that we do feel that we have a very strong case for, and we do believe that our chances of success of winning a grant is pretty significant. It's worth the endeavor.
Department of Energy, NSF, are those potential? All right. There was a time, I don't know, given current leadership in the EPA or Department of Energy, I don't know whether they would value education and public outreach as part of a proposal. There were times in this country where that could be a difference maker in that kind of a rigorous study. So you mentioned the kind of experts that you would have as a part of a research team. I would suggest you at least put on there a question for yourselves about who would be the education and public outreach partner that would help with dissemination, would help with context creating and material development, website management, and those kinds of things that make a study have far greater reach than what we might do with a set of academic reports.
Councilmember Waters, the comprehensive investigation that staff is currently thinking and trying to develop would be a study that would go through the peer review process, and it would be a study that is nothing that's been done before and something that could be used on a national level. So for other municipalities, other states could actually look at this as a baseline, some type of analysis to add on to the EPA study.
Which would just make the value, would enhance the value of the right education and public outreach partner. I'm suggesting, I mean, I could give you a list of huge projects that were winning projects from NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratory and other places that won because of their education and public outreach programs. So, yeah, put that into your thinking.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Just several clarifications. First, based on the statements from Councilmember Peck, in our baseline testing, we are in fact testing for carcinogenic hydrocarbons now, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
Thank you. We don't, in fact, have any approval authority over drilling underneath Union Reservoir. Okay. On the subject of air quality testing, am I correct in saying that we are now largely relying on the EPA tests at Boulder Reservoir? What are we doing today in Longmont?
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Martin, and I may have David Bell come down. He's actually been our connection with Boulder County.
Mhm.
Boulder County has had a sort of a partnership with Longmont whereby they have periodically throughout the years gone out to the well sites, specifically looking for leaks, specifically looking for methane emissions from well sites.
Mhm.
And we have used that information to report back to the operators that they need to make repairs or improvements to their systems, which has been effective. They have acted on that when that's been brought to their attention. That, however, is very different than say a regional air quality assessment, which is more of the nature of what NOAA or other federal organizations would be underway with, and I believe have been underway with and are continuing. And I think the Boulder Reservoir site is one of those sampling sites as part of a larger regional effort looking at the entire northeastern part of the state. Now, how we can either benefit from or supplement that information on a local level is something I think we should look into to see if we can be effective in that way. I think our most effective work, at least up to now, has been stopping the emissions, testing for any leaks or discharges from those pipes and tank battery sites, and getting it stopped.
Yes, okay, thank you. And the concern that I have is that we are not really doing anything with air quality at Union Reservoir specifically. And it's my understanding, and it's not a good one, I'm wagging this one, really to have an air quality baseline for an area, like it takes a year, right? Because you have to go through all the seasons and all of that stuff.
Years, I would say, yes.
Yeah.
To certainly develop that kind of a database under which you can then measure changes and try to direct and understand the causation and source of the changes in that. And
Right.
Again, I'm nowhere near an air quality expert.
No problem with that. I just want to make sure, because some things were said that maybe would give the impression otherwise, we do not have an air quality baseline that is going to allow us to make comparisons against what happens at Olander and Knight. Is there anything we can do to give us a basis for comparison in case we feel that we need to take action based on something that happens with those activities when they begin?
At this hour, I don't have anything that's jumping to mind. But what I would say is that given the plethora of well sites to the east of the city, I still say our best thing that is emanating from Knight or Olander is going to be site-specific monitoring of emissions from those sites. Now, whether or not, and if we're on top of that, to then be able to further analyze, source, incredibly difficult. Because I'm sitting here imagining that map that we've shown y'all that shows 50,000 wells.
Yeah.
Those are 50,000 emanation points or sources of contamination, and that's just one aspect of air quality issues, namely the oil and gas industry. Then you got to put into the background emissions from all the traffic on, say, I-25. It's very complex, and so I think us staying on top of the particular sites that are closest into the city, that we know that they are not a source of leak, is probably our first effort.
Okay, and that would include Olander and Knight.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
All right, because the environmental lobby will say, oh, well, there was this accident up in Windsor, and for several days afterwards, there were terribly elevated levels at Union Reservoir, for example. We can do that kind of monitoring. All right, thank you.
All right, the queue's empty. I just want to thank you on behalf of council for your time, your talents, your stamina, your passion, your concern for this topic. Keep it up, please. Your efforts are appreciated greatly.
And I want to say I appreciate all the department staff.
Oh, I was talking to them. I was talking to you, Dale.
I know, and I want to make that clear. And as the department, we want to appreciate the council and your diligence on this issue and your efforts to hold us accountable to stay ahead of it. So please keep doing that.
Thank you. All right, let's go on to, it's that time. Mayor and council comments. Anyone have any more comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, I'm going to cough my way through this. I wanted to thank all the Sister Cities folks who showed up tonight, even though they're all gone now, but it's a really important program, and I'm going to remind everybody once again that this was started by Dwight D. Eisenhower after the Second World War, specifically so that people built friendships one-on-one so that we would never go to war again. And this is still the principle behind Sister Cities. It's still incredibly important, and I think it's a program that I hope we will always support. The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is a few points brought up by various people who spoke on fracking. Ms. Roberts asked, how is this different from tunneling into a bank vault? Well, that's my point of view too. Unfortunately, what we have is surface rights and subsurface rights. This baffled me. When I first heard of this, I thought this is just completely insane. But this is the reality. So it isn't any different than tunneling into somebody's house, as far as I'm concerned. But that's the reality of the law. And we have to deal with not the world we wish we had, but the world we have. And as to her comment about the German company who is now drilling, they've been a great deal more cooperative than the previous company because they understand cooperation. They're over here because there's not much drilling that can be done in Europe. They wouldn't be over here, however, had the Freedom Caucus voted several years ago, shoved through Congress something that would after overturning the law that has always existed where you couldn't export U.S. oil, now you can. So now it can be exported all over the place, and this makes the oil and gas industry much more lucrative. So if you don't want this to continue, think about the people from the Freedom Caucus that were voted in, and don't vote for them again. The people on the Supreme Court, we voted those in too. If you don't like their ruling on it, vote them out, because we are responsible for voting these people in, and if you don't like what's going on with fracking in this state, change it. Vote differently.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I just would like to echo, I think, Mayor Pro Tem's comments. This was an especially, in my mind, effective session of the City Council from the beginning to the end, from Councilmember Peck's list of things we needed to get done in the future, all the way to the report by the staff on how we're handling the impending invasion under Union Reservoir. So I am really glad to have been here and seen the city staff, including us, do our best work, and I would like to thank everyone involved.
All right, City Manager, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Okay, City Attorney, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, we're adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's study session tonight. We're okay. Yeah. You worried me. Yeah.